Chapter 26. Sabayati Archipelago. Dylan and CP0 walked side by side towards Avenue 1. Just finding the information doesn't count as a successful transaction unless you pay me to take pictures. This is secretly supported by Heavenly Yaksha Doflamingo, I'm afraid. Then keep the account. Keep half of it. CP0 was silent for a moment. This did not mean the transaction was completed, but only provided information. Auction House Number 1, the main business is the human auction, occasionally there will be devil fruit or famous sword auctions. The owner behind it is none other than one of the 7 warlords of the sea today, King Dressrosa, Heavenly Yaksha Don Quixote Doflamingo. When the two of them walked to the door of Auction House Number 1, the expressions of the people around them changed and they all backed away. Some guys who didn't know what they were doing were pulled aside by their companions before they could react. "Ho, your costume is quite useful. Normally, Marine wouldn't have such a strong deterrent effect." CP0 shook his head noncommittally. As one of the senior members of CP0, he certainly knew what he represented in the eyes of others. Only a guy like Adams Dylan, who can directly talk to 5 elders, dares to yell at him, and even threaten to kill him at every turn. Dressrosa Royal Palace. Young Master. There is news from Sabayati Archipelago's Number 1 auction house that CP0 and Dark Dragon have entered the venue. Dark Dragon. Doflamingo's face darkened. This guy, not only took Sher Ryman and other small humans away by force, but also let his men hunt wantonly around, causing Dressrosa's business to gradually decline. Why are you going to auction house Number 1 now? What is the auction item today? BABY5 flipped through the records, Munch munch fruit, and there are 5 slaves. The Fishmen, the Long-Handed Tribe, the Long-Footed Tribe, the Fur Tribe and the famous Snake Chief clan. Are you going for the fruit? Or something else? BABY5 held a cigarette in his mouth and asked, "Do you want to inform the auction house?" "No." Doflamingo raised his hand, "Don't mess with that BD, just proceed normally." That BD is not a guy who follows rules. In auction house Number 1, the auctions for the Fishmen, the Chong Shao clan and the Foot clan have all ended. Next is the auction of a very rare race Fur tribe. Fur people? Dylan frowned, don't these guys rarely go to sea? No. It's not that there aren't any, but it's definitely very rare. The Fur tribe from a mysterious country are very energetic and have very powerful fighting skills, and they seem to have some special racial talent. In a huge iron cage, a thumb-thick iron chain locked an elegant guy with his head covered. For some reason, Dylan suddenly felt a slight tremor in his heart when he saw this guy. "Oh, forgive me for the offense, but I still have to say that if you want to buy this slave, you'd better have strong strength, otherwise it will be very dangerous. Then, the starting bid for this furry tribe is 700,000 Baileys." Dylan turned his head and glanced at CP0. At this time, CP0 was already a mature fan, and he knew what he should do with just one look from Dylan. The Fur tribe, although they are very rare, they are still more numerous than the mermaids, and this guy looks like a male, so the price will drop a lot. Are men going to lose their price? CP0 nodded, the value of males is generally much lower. After all, males of this specific race are usually bought as playthings. Although there are some people who have such weird hobbies, they are a minority after all. Punishment. Real punishment. Dylan looked at the Fur tribe locked in an iron cage. Although he couldn't see his face, Dylan could still feel a sense of handsomeness and elegance from him. Etc. I am the one with weird hobbies? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. CP0 couldn't help but feel a little strange as he looked at Dylan's face, which alternated between smiling and ferocious. "Hey, raise your sign. My clothes represent. Then you take off your clothes and lift them up, or I can help you take them off." Looking at Dylan with a weird look on his face, CP0 had no doubt that this lunatic could really do such a thing. OVIP number 47 bids 700,000 Baileys. Is there any higher price? In the end, no one continued to increase the price, and those who could appear at venue 1 basically knew what the clothes represented. Later, when the Snakehead clan was being auctioned, Dylan just glanced at it and closed his eyes. CP0 breathed a sigh of relief. The Snakehead clan, the price is not cheap either. The Snake Girl was finally bought by the mysterious buyer in the corner. Finally. The highlight of today. Devil fruit. Tisk, Dylan smacked his lips impatiently. It was just a paramecia fruit, but it looked like a phantom beast. Of course, it cannot be ruled out that this thing is indeed a phantom beast species. For example, zoan.frogfruit.phantom beast species. Dowdy form? It's not impossible. A powerful devil fruit that can swallow everything. Digest everything. Munch munch fruit. After quoting the price twice, CP0 got munch munch fruit at a price of 40 million. Others seemed to be under pressure from CP and rarely forced price increases. After Dylan and CP0 arrived at the auction house's office, the person in charge nodded and bowed to receive them. Celestial Dragon's strongest shield, CP0. The youngest Marine Vice Admiral in history, Dark Dragon Dylan. No matter which one it is, he can't afford to offend him. Dylan's consciousness merged into the space ring, took out a pile of treasures and threw them on the ground. It should be almost done, right? Enough is enough. The person in charge wiped his sweat. It would be great if this uncle can give him money, but who cares whether he has enough or not? Even if he doesn't give money today, let alone himself, even the young master can't do anything about it. The staff at the back led the handsome fox up. The person in charge looked a little strange at this very quiet fox. It was said that there were many casualties when he was captured. Where are you from? Zo. Tahir raised his head in surprise and looked at the man known as the strongest vice admiral under Garp. It's true that I'm from Zo, but I started traveling the sea when I was 16. Tahir said to Dylan with a smile. His expression was calm, as if he was not a slave at this moment, but a guest here. Dylan turned and walked towards the door, and Tahir and CP0 followed naturally. Looking at Tahir's back, the person in charge suddenly felt a big loss feeling in his heart. After boarding CP0's ship, Dylan lay on his exclusive rocking chair and asked, with your strength, you were actually caught by those guys? CP0 is also a little curious. Although his observation haki is not powerful, he can still sense the extraordinary aura of this man. I was injured at the time. Later, I saw them chasing after me and let them take me away. Tahir smiled calmly, I have seen and experienced many different lives, and slaves should be one of them. Right. Dylan yawned and waved to Tahir, then you can go experience it elsewhere. Just remember to return the redemption money to me. After waiting for a while and seeing no response from him, Dylan asked strangely, aren't you leaving? Tahir walked up to Dylan and straightened his face, I have spent more than 10 years traveling around the world and have seen too many joys and sorrows. Last time I returned to Xiuaohu, Boss Inuarashi said that we still need to wait for our own opportunity to appear. But I don't want to wait any longer. Tahir looked directly into Dylan's eyes, please let me follow you to witness the changes in the world. Me? Dylan frowned, I'm just a marine. Shouldn't you go to the pirates for things like chasing dreams? I remember, you guys from Xiuaohu always seem to be just. Pirates don't belong to marine, right? Although I don't know the specific reason, it is precisely because of the traditional tradition that I want to choose a different path. Tahir's eyes burned, I don't believe, this world will be filled with thieves people in the name of change. At this time, Tahir was standing in the wind. Although the facial features on his face still had some characteristics of a fox, the moon-white robe paired with his soft facial features actually made Dylan feel like he is so handsome, he is so beautiful. So beautiful. Feeling. Are you an Esper? Tahir seemed a little embarrassed and shook his head slightly, no. The charm itself? A man? No, male vixen. Tahir took out a strange fox mask and put it on, this is an innate trait of mine, sorry. When Dylan saw the fox mask, his heart moved. It's not impossible for you to get on my ship, but there are no useless people on my ship. This shows that you are not. Faced with Dylan's vulgar language, Tahir was not angry, but just slightly acquiesced. Body. Another point is that if you get on my ship, you need absolute obedience. Although you may not be allowed to join Marine, if one day it is necessary, then you must obey. Even if one day I want to attack Zo, you can't retreat either. Dylan's gaze was compelling, and Tahir remained unmoved in response to his aura. Of course, I have traveled around the world and been a soldier. In fact, when I board your warship, it is equivalent to no longer being a member of Zo. Tahir smiled slightly to cover his eyes. Disappointment, I don't agree with the tradition and promise that Zo has guarded for generations. I want to find the right path. When Dylan brought Tahir back to G5, even with the mask on, Belmir's body was shocked. Those ordinary G5 soldiers even felt their hearts skipping a beat. Tom and Shiryu were not affected, and several members of the Dantata tribe did not seem to feel this charm. Looking at the rogue marines who were already in a daze, Dylan raised his forehead and said to Tahir, "Can't you control your damn charm?" Tahir owed his body, "I'm very sorry, my practice is not enough, I will work hard." At this moment, Belmir seemed to be back to what it was like in Cocoa West Village. She walked up to Tahir and leaned forward, "Do you want to practice? I needed to? Do you want to come together?" Chapter 27. Marie joys, Pangu Palace. He has gained the power of the Fur tribe again. I really look forward to. He already has such a powerful power before the light appears. Maybe, history can come to an end here. In the garden behind the void throne, I'm stared at the huge straw hat in the shadow of the room in the distance. G5 branch. Vice Admiral. Chief Zephyr Instructor's traineeship was attacked, and the headquarters ordered the surrounding marines to provide immediate support. Zephyr? Where? Near Punk Hazard Island. Dylan stood up, "Forget it, I'll go by myself." The middle section of Grand Line, the alternating section between Paradise and New World. Ahem. Zephyr flew out from where he was, and an arc of blood drew in the air. Hundreds of marine corpses lay around. "Damn it, are you a person with abilities?" Zephyr held back the blood in his throat and stared at the huge figure in the distance. A sharp voice sounded in the dust and smoke, "Zephyr, are you not dead yet?" Miss Bajan, wearing leopard print and using a cane, looked at the injured Zephyr monster lying on the ground and smiled. "Compared to Garp, you are much worse, Zephyr." When he saw Miss Bajan, Zephyr was confused for a while, and then seemed to recall some distant memories. You are Barjan from Rock's Pirate. Jin, ha ha ha, do you still remember me? It seems you are not completely stupid after all, Zephyr. Weibul. Kill him. Yes, Mom. Edward Weibul raised his long knife and rushed towards Zephyr, but as soon as he took 2 steps, his body froze. Miss Bajan behind him also showed an unexpected look. Boom. The huge lightning fell 2 steps in front of Weibul. If he hadn't stopped in time, he would have been hit hard. In the lightning, Dylan walked out with Shura on his shoulders. "Is it you? Dark Dragon?" Dylan. Miss Bajan and Zephyr looked at the man in the middle at the same time. Only Weibul was still confused and didn't know what was going on. Dylan ignored Weibul. This guy, although his aura was very strong, it was not enough to make Dylan nervous. But it was Miss Bajan behind him. Dylan looked at the short Miss Bajan, the remnants of rocks? What? Relying on the reputation of Whitebeard, Linlin, and Kaido, now you dare to come forward again? Jin. Jin, ha ha ha, what a great kid. I heard that you killed Rod. Miss Bajan walked up to Weibul and looked at Dylan. That kid is just a slave on our ship, Jin, ha ha ha. Dylan groaned, what about you? What is your status on the Rocks ship? Miss Bajan looked at the sky in the distance and smiled mysteriously, me? I'm just an insignificant little person. Let's go, Weibul. This guy is not easy to mess with, and a more troublesome guy is coming. Are you leaving? Leave. Dylan pulled out Shura, you should leave something behind before leaving, right? The dark red slash flew towards Miss Bajan and Weibul. Miss Bajan smiled slightly, raised his crutch and blocked the flying slash. The strength is really good, but it's a pity. Before Miss Bajan could finish her words, the slash suddenly separated to the left and right, and went straight towards Weibul behind her. Ugh! Mom! I'm hurt, Mom! It hurts so much. Miss Bajan turned his head and looked at Weibul, whose right hand was cut off. His face darkened. Pick up your hand. Pick up your hand. Feeling the terrifying aura that was getting closer and closer, Miss Bajan did not dare to continue to pester him. He took a deep look at Dylan and then turned around and left with Weibul. Dylan, why don't you keep her? Zephyr looked at Miss Bajan and Weibul walking away, his eyes full of confusion. You shouldn't ask me this question. Varied. Boom. A figure hit the ground, and the grey-haired Garp looked at Zephyr lying on the ground and the Marines lying on the ground with a solemn look on his face. Rocks. Dylan walked over to Zephyr and helped him up, then stared at Garp with Zephyr. Garp. Zephyr looked at the corpses of recruits on the ground. What agreement did you make with Rocks in the Valley of the Gods back then? Garp clenched his fist, but then his expression straightened. Zephyr. Zephyr raised his left arm and shook it to interrupt Garp. Forget it, I know this matter involves some incredible people and things, you don't have to tell me. After scanning the surroundings, Zephyr said to Dylan, see if there are any survivors. After picking through the crowd, Dylan found the surviving iron and bins. Teacher Zephyr. When Recruit woke up, he almost fainted again when he saw the scene in front of him. Anne. Bins. Looking at the two remaining freshmen, Zephyr felt guilty. Dylan's eyes directly skipped bins and paused on Anne's body. There are still some differences between Anne at this time and 7 years later. His face looks very green, and his sea blue hair is tied back instead of hanging down. What's wrong? Dylan. Dylan shook his head and looked away. It's okay. Then I took a look at Zephyr. This guy changed from here on. He began to want to destroy all pirates and formed a guerrilla force himself. Anne is a good prospect, but unfortunately, along with the twisted Zephyr, his achievements are destined to be limited. Zephyr clutched his right arm and gasped, Anne, do you want to become a stronger warrior? Teacher Zephyr. Anne was a little confused. Zephyr laughed at himself, then raised his chin towards Dylan, go to G5 and follow this man. Zephyr. Garp looked at his old comrade. Zephyr said that he may have decided not to serve as the chief instructor anymore. So, what are his plans? I don't need to say more about this guy's name and strength, Anne. If you want to become a great swordsman and a more powerful marine, go ahead and follow him, A&D. Thinking of his own experience, Zephyr also showed some struggle and regret in his eyes. Maybe he made the right choice. His attitude towards pirates is exactly what you expect. The sudden change left Dylan confused. He just glanced at Anne and was seen through by old man Zephyr. Teacher Zephyr. Anne felt a little tangled in his heart, but also a little hopeful. The legend of this man. In addition to being one of the 2 generations of patron saints of East Blue, this man also has extraordinary means. That Belmere lieutenant commander, it is said that before returning to the Marine Order, he was just an ordinary Shikai lieutenant commander who had been retired for 10 years. But less than half a year later, she was able to go to the Kingdom of Flowers alone to slay those notorious pirates. There are even rumors that the current Belmere lieutenant commander already has general-level strength. Zephyr turned his gaze and looked at Dylan, I leave it to you, Anne. I am an incompetent teacher. Anne's talent should not stop here. Dylan scratched his head. This sounded strange. Marine currently has 3 admirals and 12 vice-admirals, including Blackthrone Hina and Big Grudge Smoker, all of whom are students of this old man. Garp calls him the man who built Marine. You want to say that, isn't all the pressure now on me? Anne, this woman, is strong, but she is only at an average or above average level. She still doesn't know how far she can go. But when Dylan saw the determined look in Anne's eyes, he could only sigh and said, G5, is different from ordinary Marine base. I hope you are mentally prepared, recruit. Chapter 28. See Circle Calendar 1517. It has been 3 years since Anne joined the G5 branch. At this time, the G5 branch has become the strongest Marine branch under Marineford. Dressrosa's underground business has become increasingly difficult. The first half of the Grand Line, the Devil's Triangle. Here, are there any weapons I need? Anne looked around in the fog. This fog seemed to have a very unique effect. Not only was it difficult for light to penetrate, but even the perception of sight, hearing, and color was disturbed to a certain extent. He said that first you need to get the approval of a certain person here and practice his swordsmanship. If this step is achieved, the weapon should be just a gift. Behind Anne, the tall Shiryu sat cross-legged at the stern of the boat. Over the past few years, they have become accustomed to Dylan's behavior. Most of the time, Dylan just gives orders and does not tell them the reasons. But this time Shiryu was also a little confused. Swordsmanship? In 3 years, he challenged Dylan 3 times. Each time Dylan defeated him using different methods, swordsmanship, taijutsu, haki. He could even feel that Dylan wasn't taking it seriously at all. It seems more like showing them skills and letting them imitate and learn. Shiryu doesn't know what Dylan's swordsmanship is. But it was hard for him to imagine that there would be a swordsman in such an unknown place that Dylan could admire so highly. Gecko Moria? That loser? It's unlikely. If Moria had the strength to make Dylan look at her, she would definitely not hide in the Devil's Triangle like a mouse. Who is the one? Puff, puff, puff. A swarm of bats passed over their heads, and a huge mouth appeared in the distance. Thriller bark. Shiryu glanced at it nonchalantly and lowered his head to wipe the thunderstorm again. Others may think this is an island, but Shiryu and Anne both know that this is Thriller bark itself. Anne glanced back at Shiryu. So far, this man can be regarded as half of his teacher. Moria, if you keep playing these silly tricks, I will sink your ship. Jai he 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 he. What a bad temper. Shiryu of the Rain. Amidst the eerie laughter, the surrounding bats gathered together and condensed into a tall weirdo. What are you doing? Shiryu of the Rain, and Zhang Etsu An. An may be okay, but Shiryu's strength is enough to intimidate Moria. And even if An came alone, Moria would not dare to act rashly. That person in G5. The whole sea knows that he is protective and powerful. Back then, when the red hair pirates injured one of his subordinates in West Blue, he pushed him down on the sea and beat him violently. Even the number 3 man confessed. An stood in the mist and stared at Moria's tall body. He asked me to find the samurai. This him is self-evident. Samurai. Jai he, I can. Click. Thunderstorm turned the handle of the knife, and Shiryu's eyes were already facing him. Dylan said that although you are very weak, you are very good at escaping. I just want to see how good you are at escaping. Moria swallowed. Now the entire sea knows that their so-called 7 warlords of the sea are nothing more than experienced copies of the G5 branch. 3 or 4 years ago, that unknown G5 branch non-staff boatman Tom, who had not even officially joined Marine yet, was able to suppress Sea Hero Jinbei in all aspects. That pink-haired woman always went to the Amazon Lily in the calm belt to cause trouble for the Empress Hancock. Although most of the time they were just fighting each other, not life and death. But according to the description in the World Economic News, the woman is now able to suppress Hancock. The business of Heavenly Yaksha is often destroyed inexplicably, but the murderer is never seen. It is said that Doflamingo would often lose his temper in the palace, cursing words such as BD Dark Dragon, damn slave. Shiryu. It is said that he went to Kraykana Island 2 years ago. No one knows the result, but Shiryu himself admitted that he lost to Mihawk. As for Crocodile, I heard that after seeing the Dark Dragon once, he became a little negative and decadent. Is it your turn now? Moria pulled out a huge pair of scissors from behind, and behind him, the 3 weirdos stood ready. Although Dark Dragon has not actually killed Shishibukai so far, they have heard some strange rumors. If Dark Dragon is allowed to find a valid reason, then he will not be held accountable for erasing Shishibukai. Jai he, forget it. Moria looked at the zombie soldiers and 3 weirdos behind him and seemed to recall something, and then put away the big scissors. As for the samurai, it's in the woods ahead. You can find it yourself. Bar. After saying that, Moria turned into a bat and disappeared. The 3 weirdos took one look at Shiryu and Anne and left one after another. Hey, has this kind of guy really challenged Kaido, the 100 Beasts? No. Anne shook his head. He is not afraid of you, me, or Dylan Vice Admiral. He is worried about the life safety of the 3 weirdos. Shiryu was stunned for a moment, then showed disdain. Boring. After Moria and the 3 weirdos left, the surrounding zombies and ghosts also left under their control. Anne glanced at the woods in the distance and looked back at Shiryu with some confusion. Shiryu shook his head. Now, with the help of the Ashura fruit, he is particularly sensitive to the scent of strong men. But, the woods didn't have the feeling he expected. Despite their doubts, the 2 people walked towards the woods resolutely. That man. Never go wrong. In the middle of the woods, a zombie wearing a white kimono sat cross-legged. When Anne and Shiryu approached, the zombie raised his head and glanced at Anne. Has the person who decides destiny appeared? What? Anne was stunned for a moment, full of surprise. No need to worry about it, it's just the whisper of the undead. The zombie looked at Anne and then nodded slightly. Then, tell your purpose here. Shiryu saw that the zombie ignored him and didn't care at all. He walked not far away and hugged Thunderstorm and began to close his eyes and rest. Anne pursed his lips and finally said, I followed the order and came to learn swordsmanship from a person named Samurai. Samurai. The zombie's eyes were empty. What a long-lasting name. Anne looked at the zombies in front of her. For a moment, she seemed to see a figure rising into the sky and swinging a knife into the sky. Then, show your sword skills. The zombie sat cross-legged and stared at Anne. Swordsmanship. Anne looked serious. Please give me some advice. Judgment of Crime.no Life. A huge slash exploded, and then it shattered into pieces and bombarded the surrounding ground like a scourge. In the castle in the distance, Moria felt this breath and then turned around and closed the window. Wrong. After the slash dissipated, the kimono zombie looked directly at Anne. This move is very strong, but it is not used like this. Anne is a little puzzled. He has already mastered the judgment of sins and no life move very well. The zombie stood up and held the handle of the knife with his right hand. I have been dead for hundreds of years. The power, soul, and haki of this body have all dissipated. I can only explain it to you with the power of others. The correct understanding of the move just now is that haki is mixed into it, and the slashes are condensed together with absolute control, and the opponent is quickly penetrated. Like this. Judgment of crime.no life, laugh. Call out. A crescent-shaped narrow slash flew out, penetrating the rocks and cutting off the trees. Fly all the way out of sight. Shiryu next to him squinted his eyes, relying purely on swordsmanship, this guy. And Anne's heart was beating wildly. I had been pondering this move for several months before I managed to master it. The man in front of me learned it just by looking at it. No. It's not that I learned it, it was that I surpassed myself in an instant and found the correct usage. Anne believes that this is the true conviction and no rebirth. This move is somewhat similar to the move below, but its meaning is different. Meaning. Anne knew that the real teaching had begun. Chapter 29. Name? Didn't he tell you? Dylan looked at Anne and Shiryu. Anne held the handle of Chu Shui tightly and shook his head. He said that he was just a ghost of history and did not need to leave his name. Well. He is Wanakuni's sword god, the dragon-slaying samurai, Shimatsuki Ryoma. Then this knife. Anne can clearly feel the power of this knife, and even now she is still a little unable to control it. It's Wanakuni's national treasure, the black sword Akaswai. It's the famous sword that Ryoma once used to kill the dragon. On the sofa next to him, Shiryu said a little weirdly, you have to be careful. There are only 3 such knives in the sea. If the strength is not enough, even with Dylan as a deterrent, I am afraid someone will not be able to help you because of it. Take action. Anne glanced back at Shiryu, who still didn't understand the meaning. Shiryu played with Thunderstorm and looked at Chu Shui. Do you know why its blade is black? Don't you think it looks familiar? Anne looked at Chu Shui's blade with a serious look on his face. Is it haki? Yes, it's armament haki. Shiryu held his cigar and blew out a puff of smoke. This state can only be achieved by the holder using extremely powerful haki and insisting on covering it with haki for several years or even decades. On the sea, this kind of knife is generally called black knife. Shiryu looked at Anne with a half smile. So far, there are 3 black knives in the sea. Black knife. Yet, the holder. Eagle Eye Mihawk, black knife. Shura, the holder. Dark Dragon Dylan, the black knife. Chu Shui, the holder. Broken Moon Anne. Who do you think those guys who are obsessed with swords will attack? Anne was stunned at first. Although Dylan said before that this was Wanakuni's national treasure, she didn't have much idea in her mind. It wasn't until this moment that she understood the value of what was tied around her waist. Sword. As a swordsman, of course I will not be afraid of fighting. Anne's eyes darkened. This is not only the wish of Vice Admiral Dylan, but also the entrustment of Mr. Ryoma. No matter what dangers and challenges, I will cut them off one by one. Dylan ignored her impassioned speech and asked suddenly, Ryoma's swordsmanship should be mainly about slashing and attacking weak points, right? How did you gain? Anne didn't know how he knew it, but he was used to the man's near omniscience and omnipotence. It's very amazing, but I need more fighting. This kind of swordsmanship requires constant fighting, to find flaws in the enemy and the enemy's moves to improve myself. Is this so? Dylan pondered for a moment. He does not object to his subordinates fighting, and in some aspects he even supports it. But since Miss Bajan suddenly appeared a few years ago and was bumped into by himself and Garp, he immediately disappeared. At that time, Dylan knew that these remnants of the big pirate group must have something unknown in their hands, otherwise it would be impossible to let them go with the power of Marie Joyce. Be it Rock's remnants or Roger's crew. Some people even live blatantly in the public eye. Such as Rayleigh, Kyukaros, Buggy. What is it that makes the world government take such chances? To say that the 5 elders are idiots for letting King Luffy grow from a 30 million piece of trash to the 5th emperor Dylan is not believed. There must be some kind of force restraining Marie Joyce, preventing them from taking action easily. But this power has never been exposed directly. Was it the great kingdom it once was? Or is it Joey Boy's will? DS will? Drums of liberation? Or is it the will of Nika? Oh shit! Dylan stood up with a bang, and Anne and Shiryu next to him were stunned. What AFG grassroots hot-blooded comic? In the end, it's not the adventures of the prince. All of them are FG actors. How can I beat Laozi 1 against 9? FK 1 against 9, the 2 crystals and the 2 springs belong to other people. Shiryu looked strange, and Anne lowered his head slightly. Occasionally, Dylan Vice Admiral will say something that no one understands. It'll be fine once you get used to it. Call. Dylan slumped down on the sofa and waved, and Shiryu and Anne wisely withdrew. He can use his memory advantage to make some arrangements in advance, but in certain areas, there must be a red line. As long as he crosses or even touches that red line, there will be power that has never been shown before to collide with him. For example, Miss B.A. Jin, although Dylan is sure to kill her, as she said herself, she is probably at the level of an ordinary crew member in rocks at best. After all, Kaido, who was a ghost clan back then, was just a trainee crew member. What about Rocks himself? What about other cotters? Valley of the Gods, why was it wiped off the map again? Outside the G5 base, there is a dock. Hey, Tom, isn't it done yet? The shipyard was built between 2 mountain peaks, in a huge cave filled with various metals. In addition to the boatman Tom, there are several people wearing white scientific research clothes who are constantly taking out metal ingots from a furnace for analysis and testing. Belmir walked into the cave with his hands on the back of his head. Not yet, Xiaomei, but the clanging metal is almost ready. Tom picked up a piece of metal, tested it, and put it back. 3 years ago, after Dylan got the munch fruit, he asked Vegapunk to help him fuse it in a small furnace. Some time later, when Dylan sent some of the special alloys obtained through the ton furnace to the Vegapunk office, Vegapunk showed great interest and expressed its willingness to cooperate with the G5 base. The condition of the cooperation is that the Vegapunk Institute will detect and analyze the properties of metals for Dylan and be responsible for providing the power system for his car. G5 is responsible for providing some rare alloys for Vegapunk himself to research. Looking at the neatly stacked timber on the side of the cave, Belmir muttered, "Adam, the treasure tree. I don't know where this guy got so many. I heard they are very expensive." After counting the metal ingots, a scientific researcher said to Tom, "After calculation, all the materials needed for the Shenlong have been prepared, including the error losses that may occur during the construction." So. The researcher closed the notebook in his hand and asked, "When will it officially start? How long it takes?" A voice sounded at the entrance of the cave. Dylan looked at the metal in the room and felt a sense of accomplishment in his heart. According to calculations, it will take a year and 3 months. Subsequent testing and improvements will be carried out. It will be ready for use in about a year and a half. People at the Institute still like Dylan Vice Admiral very much. Firstly, he is very safe here, and secondly, the living and scientific research conditions here are very good. Let's start as soon as possible. Dylan's eyes rarely showed expectation. Shenlong cost him a lot of thought. Whether it's Tom, the super alloy produced by munch fruit, or the treasure tree atom. Dylan paused as he turned and walked out of the cave. "Tom. Hey." Tom raised his head and looked at Dylan in confusion. Dylan looked at the excited look on chubby Tom's face and shook his head, then said with a serious face, "As I said before, strength is fundamental. At least for the time being." Seeing Dylan's expression, Tom also solemnly sighed, "Understood." Chapter 30. The capital of Alabasta, Albina. Dylan walked aimlessly on the street with Shura on his arm. On both sides of the street, some sneaky guys were quietly paying attention to him. Although the behavior of these guys is clear under the perception of the Heart Network, Dylan has no intention of doing anything to them. These people all have their own origins, including CP, World Economic News, major pirate groups, and maybe even marine intelligence officers. Baroque Work Society. Crocodile's face was gloomy. Although Dark Dragon Dylan had never caused trouble to him in the past few years, the whole sea was rumored to have completely lost his fighting spirit after meeting him once. Even the world government is asking about this, consciously or unconsciously. Weak people are not worthy of becoming Shishibukai. What's that BD doing again? It's unclear at the moment. Apart from us, there are many people from other forces around who are also observing him. Few crocodile exhaled a puff of smoke. I know, tell people to withdraw. That BD is moody. It's best not to provoke him. A woman wearing a cowboy hat sitting next to Crocodile had a look of surprise in her eyes. Don't look at me like that, Nico Robin. Crocodile glanced at her. What you know about him comes from newspapers and legends. Only those of us who have actually seen him know how terrifying that BD is. I may not be happy if you tarnish my reputation in front of women like this, little lizard boom. The door flew open, and a young man in black appeared at the door carrying a long knife. Dark Dragon. Crocodile gritted his teeth and stared at Dylan. Don't make such a bad face. Dylan walked over to the table and sat down with his feet up on the table. Seeing Dylan's unscrupulous look, Crocodile became more and more worried. It would be fine if it was the Fishman, or Zanjiuan, or even Shiryu of the Rain. The most they could do is to practice with him, but now that the main player is here, things may not be that simple. Could it be also for Pluton? What are you here for? Crocodile asked in a deep voice. Dylan glanced at him sideways. What are you farting on? Laozi, Marine Vice Admiral, except Marie Joyce, where I can't go casually, is there anywhere in the world that I can't go to? You. Crocodile took a breath. This BD has never treated these Shishibukai as human beings. Next to Nico Robin, his palms were covered in sweat. If this man hadn't been preceded by Hero Garp, his title might not be the youngest Marine Vice Admiral in history, but the strongest Marine Vice Admiral in history. Nico Robin. Dylan glanced at the woman next to him who was so nervous that he was shaking all over. Nico Robin was shocked. He came to find himself? My journey, is this the end? That's fine. Although the sea is vast, I have never found anyone who can accept me. Maybe it's not a bad thing to end here. Dylan watched from the side as Nico Robin's expression changed from frightened to sad to distracted. Crocodile next to him frowned, and he was also struggling in his heart. Whether we should come to the rescue or not, Nico Robin is currently the only person known to be able to decipher the text of history. But if he angers Dark Dragon Dylan, it's unclear whether he can survive. For the first time, Crocodile felt that the identity of 7 warlords of the sea was sometimes useless. She. After hesitating for a moment, Crocodile opened his mouth to find out what Dylan meant. Shut up. Dylan raised his eyelids and glanced at him. You are amazing. You are noble. It's okay if I don't speak. Just when Crocodile was feeling regretful and Nico Robin was calmly preparing to face death, Dylan stood up and walked out the door. When he walked to the door, Dylan looked back at Nico Robin and shook his head. Dark Dragon Dylan has risen so quickly that, except for Marine senior executives, few people know that he is still under the command of Admiral Aokiji until now. Of course Nico Robin doesn't know either. The pirate's perception of him is that he is cruel, ruthless, and protective of his shortcomings. It wasn't until Dylan left for more than 10 minutes that the two of them broke out of the silence. Do you know that guy? Crocodile is a little confused. Is Nico Robin related to the Dark Dragon? If this is the case, then you don't have many choices left to you. Either let her go free immediately, or treat him as an ancestor. No. Nico Robin shook his head. I've only heard of his name. This is the first time I've seen him. Crocodile also saw Nico Robin's expression just now. That kind of mood cannot be faked. It seems that he is very interested in historical texts and ancient weapon. It's no wonder that the boatman named Tom is in G5. Crocodile was relieved when he thought of this. But there were some things he still couldn't figure out, such as Dylan's attitude towards Nico Robin and the way he looked at her just now. If I must say, I am very disappointed. What are you disappointed about? After leaving Baroque Works, Dylan returned to his aimless self. He doesn't have a great solution for Nico Robin either. This woman's identity is too sensitive, especially since Tom himself is in G5. If he does something to her, it will inevitably make Marie Joyce suspicious and fearful. Dylan glanced at the scorching sun above his head, and said inexplicably, Hey, you guy, I just came to see you, don't be so nervous, right? Aokiji walked to Dylan with a serious face, and the two walked side by side. O'Hara. Is anyone else alive? I don't know, there shouldn't be one, right? Dylan turned and glanced at Aokiji. How did I know about this kind of thing? How old was I at that time? Aokiji was relieved after being choked by Dylan. I thought you were also a remnant of O'Hara and came to see your fellow villagers. Dylan rolled his eyes at him, it was all in his eyes. Ah, How can you say that I am also your boss? Dylan held out his hand. What? Aokiji looked at him, confused for a moment. Pay wages. Dylan raised his palms. You still know that you are my boss? How long has it been since G5 received salary from the headquarters? As our boss, it is reasonable for you to pay us wages, right? Aokiji opened his eyes and felt a little incredulous. Who in the whole sea doesn't know that the G5 branch is famously wealthy? Not to mention that you have been plundering East Blue for more than 10 years, just the hundreds of years of accumulation of the 8 treasure navy. By the way, I heard that you are also cooperating with Vegapunk to buy and sell rare alloys? Are they worth more than gold? And Stop, stop. Dylan interrupted Aokiji with a wave of his hand. If you keep talking about it, it will be my turn to save Marineford. UBD, what else do you call looting? Those are the trophies I captured. Dylan glanced at Aokiji with disgust. Normally, this guy could never be that poor. After all, he and Spangdine's family seemed to have some kind of connection and agreement. The Spondam father and son's control of Buster Call was directly related to Aokiji. But just as Aokiji rarely inquires into his privacy, Dylan doesn't ask much about Aokiji's affairs. In this world, who has some strength but no connections? Chapter 31. East Blue, over Cocoa West Village, Dylan opened his heartnet and felt it. Not here? When they landed in the orange orchard, Nokijao was taking care of the orange trees. When he saw Dylan Luo, Nokijao ran to Dylan in surprise. Brother Dylan. You've grown taller again, Nyochigao. Dylan touched Nyochigao's blue hair and took out some seeds from the ring. These are some seeds I collected on the Grand Route. They are all kinds of seeds. Such oranges. After receiving the seeds, Nakajao held Dylan's sleeve with his hand and walked towards the wooden house next to him. Aegean, the village policeman sitting outside the yard, saw a smile in Dylan's eyes. Dylan Vice Admiral is back. Do you want to eat here today? Dylan was hesitating whether to agree or not when Nakajao gently tugged on his cuffs with a look of anticipation in his eyes. Okay, thank you for your hard work, Nokijao. Nyochi ran into the kitchen happily. Dylan put Shura aside and chatted with Aegean under the orange tree next to the yard. Where's Nami? Nami ran out to take measurements elsewhere again. Aegean rubbed his forehead. Now that Nami is 13 years old, she has no objection to Nami going out to measure and draw Aegean. Because the entire East Blue Marine knows that Nami and Nakajao from Cocoa West Village call the Dark Dragon Vice Admiral Big Brother Dylan. Under this premise, Nami can hitchhike with Marine wherever she goes. And most of the Marines will help take care of Nami. I heard that I have already run near the Kingdom of Goa. It's really a young age and a girl. Although he said this, Aegean still had a smile in his eyes. Where? Dylan was stunned. Goa Kingdom? Isn't that the hometown of the Sun God? Seeing Dylan's reaction, Jian was stunned for a moment. Although he was a little confused, he still said, the Kingdom of Goa is not very far from here, and we can take a marine warship there. Is it a coincidence? Or is it the self-correction of history and the world? Dylan's fists tightened, and there was a hint of cruelty in his eyes. Damn the Sun God, Lao Zi will kill you now. In the past few years, it has been good to come back alone or with Belmir. Dylan has already developed a certain degree of affection for this peaceful village. He originally decided to save Belmir. In addition to not wanting her to die, he also had the intention of interfering with the history of the Sun God. But over the past few years, Dylan has developed some family-like feelings for the mother and daughter in this cabin. Now knowing that history is still trying to correct itself, Dylan feels an evil fire in his heart. Kill the FG Sun God and finish the show immediately. But this kind of thing can only be thought about after all. If Dylan really killed the 12-year-old Sun God without any evidence, his 7 aunts, 8 aunts, uncles and uncles would not tell him. Not to mention the power of darkness, the Sun God's grandfather One Punch Man Garp himself may not be able to bear it. Seeing Dylan's mood seemed a little strange for a moment, and Jian was also a little confused. Is there something wrong with the Kingdom of Goa? I heard that it is the cleanest and most beautiful country in the world. It's time to eat Aegean, brother Dylan. Little Nyochi Gao walked to the door wearing an apron and greeted the two people in the yard. Huh? Orange stew again? Nakajao. Stop blabbering. This is Aunt May's specialty. Nokijao, I have something else to do, Dylan took out a bunch of books and measuring tools from the ring. these are gifts for Nami, and. Dylan took out some money and put it on the table. Aegean, ask everyone to bring the harvest oranges to the square. I will bring them to G5 to satisfy everyone's greed. After Aegean's lips moved, he finally refused and turned around to go out to summon the villagers. Looking at Aegean's back, Nyaki raised her chin and said to Dylan with a smile, "Brother Dylan is always so gentle." Dylan stretched out his hand and flicked Nakajao's forehead. "What are you talking about, you little brat? What do you know about gentleness?" Nyaki smiled happily. Brother Dylan saw that this year's orange harvest was huge and no one could sell it, right? But he didn't directly say that he wanted to help us so that everyone doesn't have to be favored. Dylan rubbed Nakajao's head. "That's not the case, Nakajao. Belmere doesn't come back as often as I do. She misses the oranges in her hometown." Nakajao grinned and did not refute, but looked at Dylan with eyes full of intimacy and dependence. When Dylan left amid everyone's thanks, Aegean looked at the light disappearing in the distance and smiled slightly. "What an amazing man! Does Aegean think so too?" Nokijao asked while washing the dishes. Aegean laughed and said, "That's not what I think. That's how the whole world describes him." "Huh? The whole world?" Nakajao turned her head and looked at Jian. In her understanding, Brother Dylan was a very powerful marine. But she didn't know how powerful it was. He is a man known as the youngest marine vice admiral in history. In the future, he may even be the strongest marine vice admiral in history. But even then, he is still our big brother Dylan, isn't he? Aegean was stunned for a moment, and then said with a smile on his face, "Yes, because of this, he is an amazing man." After hovering in the air for a while, Dylan finally did not go to Goa Kingdom. There is Roger's son there is a base of the Revolutionary Army, and old man Garp is often there. It is not appropriate for me to come into contact with too many forces now. Nami. Standing in the sky and looking into the distance, Dylan sighed and left. Kingdom of Goa. Windmill Village. One Piece. Nami looked at the rubber idiot in front of him, and then at the boy with Madara on his face next to him. "Yes, I am the man who wants to become the Pirate King." After experiencing the hour-long incident, Nami hated pirates from the bottom of her heart. What's so good about being a pirate? Are you going to kill and rob civilians indiscriminately? Luffy was stunned, and Ace's expression froze. Of course not. Luffy raised his arms. "I became a pirate because pirates have the most freedom." Before Nami could speak, Luffy grinned at Nami. "Hey Nami, you will be my navigator? How about becoming the Pirate King's navigator?" "No. I hate pirates." "Ha." After returning to the G5 base, Dylan felt a little irritable, and Shiryu ran away as soon as he saw him. Anne and Tahir left after a moment of silence, while Tom was still at the dock. In the end, only Sher Ryman and Belmere had the guts to go to Dylan's office. "Ah? What's going on?" Belmere sat down next to Dylan carelessly, and Sher Ryman looked at Dylan worriedly. Belmere, who had just sat down, looked happy when he saw the oranges on the table. He picked up one and was about to peel it. "It's the oranges in the village? Really?" Belmere's hand stopped in midair and turned to look at Dylan. "Is there something going on in the village? If something happens, I still have the time to bring you oranges? If something happens, I will bring Aegean's head to you." Dylan rolled his eyes at Belmere angrily. Although Dylan didn't actually lose his temper, Belmere heard something unusual. "Then, did Nami and Nakako make you angry?" Belmere asked in a whisper. For these two daughters, Belmere's heart is full of love. It is they who gave themselves the hope and courage to live. Dylan sighed and shook his head. "No, they are all fine. I am just worried." Although she was usually very rough, as a woman, Belmere certainly didn't believe what Dylan said, but since he said so, it was inconvenient for her to ask further. "I don't know why, but Belmere remembered what he said in the wind and snow on Segu Island a few years ago. Fate will eventually separate us." Chapter 32. Grand Line, Com Belt. Amazon Lily Kingdom. Dark Dragon. Boa Hancock stood up from the throne and looked at the female warrior below. "Who else?" The female warrior recalled for a while and then said, "Besides him, the other two people are Moonbroken and. Boa Hancock's face darkened. "It's that woman again." Belmere came alone every time before, and every time he came, he made the entire Nine Snakes Island restless. The monsters in Com Belt are really powerful and very helpful for training. A whole Boa Hancock gritted his teeth and stood up and walked outside. Outside Nine Snake Island, a warship with the words G5 printed on it is parked at sea. Anne looked serious, and Belmere put his hands on the side of the boat and smoked. Empress Boa Hancock. Anne looked at Boa Hancock with a stern look on his face, and the swordsman's intuition made him aware of the danger. Hey! Hancock, long time no see. Belmere held a cigarette and waved to the opposite ship. Boa Hancock looked at the man lying on the rocking chair with his face covered with newspapers, and felt furious. UBD, what are you doing here at Nine Snakes? Men are here. Don't think that Lao Zi won't beat you because you are a woman. A lazy voice sounded from under the newspaper, but the man showed no intention of getting up, and he didn't even lift the newspaper off his face. Boa Hancock's face turned green and white, but then he seemed to think of something, and said softly, "Don't you dare to look directly at my face? Dark Dragon. Although I don't quite understand why you are here, but, no matter what I do, I will be forgiven, because I am really, so beautiful." After speaking, Boa Hancock raised his head and flicked the hair beside his ears, and the entire Kuja pirates cheered, "Your Majesty the King, you are so beautiful." Dylan lifted the newspaper from his face and stood up and looked directly at Boa Hancock. "So you, a commonplace girl, are really a low-level person?" Seeing Dylan, whose expression didn't change at all, Boa Hancock was shocked. This man is indeed very powerful, so he won't be unresponsive. But when he saw that the people on the entire G5 warship didn't react much. The most beautiful woman in the world, 7 warlords of the sea, Empress Boa Hancock slowly punched a word on her head. Facing the playful looks from Dylan and Belmere, the muscles on Boa Hancock's face trembled. Why didn't these people react at all? The Dark Dragon was strong enough, and the 2 women were also pretty good. Why can those Marines resist her beauty? Is G5 already so powerful? You like beauty, right? Dylan curled his lips, turned his head slightly and shouted into the cabin, "Hey, Tahir, come out to see God." "No, come out to see the most beautiful woman in the world." As soon as Dylan finished speaking, the expressions of others on the G5 warship changed. There is expectation and there is fear. Even Anne's hands were shaking slightly. Ta-ta! Ta-ta! When the sound of Clog's footsteps sounded from the cabin, the Marines on the deck were in a very strange state. Some people struggled to turn their heads to the side, but they seemed to be bound by some kind of magic and couldn't break free. Some people have tense muscles all over their bodies and sweat on their heads. Looking at Marine with different expressions on the G5 ship, Boa Hancock became more and more curious. A figure with animal ears appeared at the door of the cabin, and then she saw a white-haired man wearing a moon-white gown and holding a small folding fan in his hand appeared in the Sunday Goose. Some Marines began to feel weak uncontrollably as soon as they saw that figure. Tahir walked to the bow of the ship and bowed slightly towards the ship of the Nine Snakes pirates opposite. "Empress Boa Hancock? I've heard about her name for a long time." A breeze blew and both ships fell into deathly silence. Dylan lay on the rocking chair and picked his ears, while Anne tried to hold his breath to fight against this invisible force. Belmere stared at Tahir with a playful smile, not shying away. On the ship of the Nine Snakes pirates, everyone's eyes were fixed on Tahir. A feeling of he is so beautiful arose in everyone's heart, and the more they looked at him, the more confused and depressed they became. "Hey! Hey!" A burst of coercion swept away, and the members of the Nine Snakes pirates woke up from their indescribable fantasies. But even so, many people couldn't help but look at Tahir quietly. Boa Hancock stared at the elegant Tahir as if facing a formidable enemy. "Who are you?" Tahir raised his slender white arms and folded them together, saluting her slightly. "This is Tahir, a navigator from the G5 branch. He currently has no military rank." Boa Hancock clenched his fist and shouted in his heart, "UBD, is this what I asked?" Ah! Just now, she had been beguiled by Tahir's charm for a moment and fell briefly into fantasy. If she hadn't relied on Conqueror's powerful aura and mind, I'm afraid she would have made a more serious fool of herself. But even so, now she just wants to return to the Nine Snakes Palace and take a good bath. "Dark Dragon, why are you here?" Boa Hancock reluctantly used Conqueror's pressure to resist Tahir's charm while looking up at Dylan with cold eyes. "Straighten your back and talk to Lao Zi." Dylan frowned and glanced at Boa Hancock. This woman always reveals a kind of arrogance unconsciously when talking to others, and likes to raise her head and point her nostrils at others. Boa Hancock's pupil shrank. "You. Don't you understand what Lao Zi said?" Dylan narrowed his eyes, put his right hand on the handle of the shura knife and pulled the shura out slightly. Click! Conqueror's haki, mixed with strong murderous aura and bloody aura, instantly swallowed up Tahir's charm and Boa Hancock's Conqueror's coercion. The crew members of the Nine Snakes pirates rolled their eyes and fell to the ground under this aura. For the woman Boa Hancock, Dylan's senses are not even as good as those of other Shishibukai. She openly resisted and attacked the Marine generals, and was a disservice in the Summit War. The Impel Down riot was also inseparable from her. Dylan slowly pulled out shura, his eyes cold. You can try to verify your strength or your beauty. Belmir and Tahir, who were standing on both sides of Dylan, looked calm, while Anne, who was a little further away, looked somewhat surprised. Please wait a moment, Dark Dragon Vice Admiral. An old voice sounded on the ship of the Nine Snakes pirates, and Gloriosa, who was on crutches, was the first to wake up from her coma. As the former Emperor of Amazon Lily's third generation, Gloriosa still has good strength, but she still failed to hold on under the momentum just now. Hancock doesn't disrespect you, she's just used to it. Gloriosa looked a little embarrassed. As Hancock's guide and Amazon Lily's previous emperor, she cannot sit back and watch the majesty of the contemporary emperor be violated. However, what is more terrifying than this is the man in front of him who has already been famous throughout the sea and is the nightmare of most pirates. Unlike the young Hancock, Gloriosa knew better the power this man represented. Snake Girl. Gloriosa raised her head to look at Hancock with difficulty. At this point, she could do no more. It's just that Gloriosa still doesn't understand why there is such a huge gap in this man's attitude towards Shishibukai. I heard that the world's greatest swordsman, Eagle Eye Mihawk, has a close personal relationship with him, and Tyrant Xiong seems to have been recognized by him. Other people. Although the reason is unknown, through intelligence analysis, Gloriosa can clearly feel the evil intentions of the Dark Dragon towards them. I am being rude. Boa Hancock took one look at the people on the boat and finally gave in with the murderous intention that had not dissipated at all. In addition to being a pirate, she is also the Emperor of Amazon Lily. Chapter 33. Ruskagina Island. This place is called the Island of 48 Seasons and is a symbolic place where human civilization has lost to the power of nature. The G5 warship docked at the island. Dylan jumped onto the beach first, followed closely by Anne, Belmir, and Tahir. After taking a look at this huge island, Dylan nodded. There was indeed a lot of beasts in it. Belmir is a little confused. To say that Anne is okay, currently his strength is indeed lacking. But she and Tahir were basically stress-free when facing these large animals. They are just slightly larger kittens and puppies. The first stage goal, survive inside for a month. Dylan looked at the three people who were hesitant to speak, with a mysterious smile on his face, and stretched out his hand towards Anne. I will confiscate the autumn water first. Anne untied his kiashui and handed it to Dylan, then took the ordinary weapon handed over by Marine next to him. After entering, except for Anne, you two are not allowed to use armament haki to fight, and Tahir is not allowed to use the power of lightning. After speaking, Dylan took the lead and walked into the huge forest. Are you going to? Belmir walked next to him. If this guy also went in, wouldn't his momentum alone be enough to scare those beasts? Dylan put on flip-flops and beach pants and walked away and said, one of your other tasks is to protect me. If I am attacked by a wild beast, you will fail the task. Hey, Anne, left. Roar. A giant ape rushes toward Dylan, holding a tree trunk. Dylan was unmoved and still sat there concentrating on the barbecue. Drink. In the distance, Anne held a half-broken sword and rushed directly to Dylan's left side. Armament haki covered the broken sword. Dylan glanced at Anne as he twirled the roast in his hand. The huge size gap between the two sides made Anne look so small. On the other side, a huge lion was fighting with Belmir. If you waste your energy like this, I'm afraid you won't be able to last a few days. Dylan picked up the barbecue, smelled it, showed a satisfied expression, and then took a bite. After chewing a few mouthfuls, Dylan groaned with satisfaction before continuing to speak to Belmir. Of course you have to go all out in battle, but you also have to know how to distribute the power. While causing the maximum damage, it must also be the most reasonable. To conserve one's own strength. With your style of play, if you encounter an opponent who is a little faster or a little stronger in vitality, if others are not killed by you, you will die of exhaustion first. Haki also consumes physical energy, just like Devil Fruit's ability to activate. The 3 people he brought here this time were all still lacking in combat skills. Belmir lacks the use of skills, and armament haki does not use enough, and Tahir relies too much on the power of lightning and the moon lion form. How to use every muscle and every fiber of haki effectively. Why are there so many ineffective dodging and jumping? Are you here for the dance? Why did you attack his legs? The move you just made had a chance of hitting its throat. Slashing is not for attacking waves. Every swing of the sword has its purpose and meaning. Tahir. Don't use your charm ability, not even on female monkeys. Amazon Lily. 9 Snakes Palace. They left. Boa Hancock stood up and asked happily. This past year has been a very difficult year for everyone at Amazon Lily. That man with a notorious reputation would appear on Ruscana Island not far away from time to time, so the 9 Snakes pirates did not dare to go out and plunder. Although Shishibuokai's looting was legal, some things seemed to be unable to restrain the evil dragon. On the G5 warship, Anne held autumn water in her arms and meditated. At this time, she had lost the youthfulness of 4 years ago. Both temperament and figure have improved greatly. At present, there is already a trace of the swordsman. Tahir, on the other hand, was sitting cross-legged on the bow of the boat facing the wind, his pair of autumn-cut eyes slightly narrowed. Hey, I said you can't be more careful. After all, you are also a woman. If Aegean sees your virtue, I'm afraid he will marry another girl in the village tomorrow. Dylan took out a cigarette, lit it, and threw another one to Belmir out of habit. Belmir took the cigarette and smiled. Ah, you are so gentle, Dylan, are you worried about my lifelong affairs? I have Nyokijo and Nami, which is enough. Dylan rolled his eyes at him and didn't dwell on the issue anymore. It's better to know some things by yourself. Do you know what level you are at now? Dylan exhaled a puff of smoke and looked into the distance. Combat strength. Belmir thought for a while and then said, to be honest, I'm not very sure, but I guess I'm still no match for Hancock. Oh? It seems that you are very sober and have not been blinded by the flattery from outside. More than a year ago, that guy from Morgan speculated in the World Economic News that Belmir was strong enough to suppress the Empress Boa Hancock. Although her abilities are ineffective against me, her strength, physical skills and haki should be stronger than mine, and in the past few years of fighting, I can still feel that she seems to have mastered a very magical ability. Strength. After hesitating for a while, Belmir continued, after all, she still relies on your reputation, and she has reservations and scruples every time she makes a move. Yes, training is basically over. Starting from this year, the enemies you encounter may not have any scruples about me. Belmir's eyes lit up. You mean, are you ready to contact the New World? Although the location where G5 is stationed is itself located in the New World, in the past 4 or 5 years, Dylan rarely took the initiative to advance forward. This has also led to the fact that in the New World pirate group, except for the Red Hair Pirates and Don Quixote Pirates, almost all other famous players have no contact with G5. After all, Dylan fought the entire Red Hair Pirates incident alone. Of course, occasionally some of the big pirates' followers would be killed by other people in G5, such as Shiryu and the others who were hunting outside. But there are no famous players. Dylan shook off the newspaper in his hand, and red-haired Shank's reward order took up the entire headline. The 4th Sea Emperor is born, and the struggle for hegemony officially begins. The moment she saw the title, Belmir's breath froze. Red Hair Pirates, although she briefly fought against them, was defeated by Usopp almost instantly. A scary man like Shiryu, although he severely injured Lucky Lu, he was also injured by the Red Hair's blow. Now a few years have passed, although both she and Shiryu have changed. But Belmir believes that they, who can be called Emperors of the Sea, will never stand still. Even their improvement will be greater and more obvious. After all, to a certain extent, he and Shiryu still live under Dylan's protection. The other party is facing bloody fighting every day. Thinking of this, Belmir's eyes darkened. Then, after I go back to rest this time, Anne and I will work together to move forward. Go, fight, and experience real life and death. Time is running out. You must master your power as soon as possible. In the past few years, although Belmir knew that she had something like Conqueror's Haki, she had almost never been able to release it after the Drum Island incident. Dylan crumpled the newspaper into a ball. Now that the division of power has been formed, go out and fight. Except for the celestial dragons for the time being, no matter who you kill on the sea, I can take the responsibility for you. Chapter 34. Tato Land. Charlotte Linlin looked at Pedro, who was subdued below, and Pocmus, who was kneeling beside him begging for mercy. Well, you are so brave, you guy. Tell me, what price are you prepared to pay? Pocmus was panicked when he heard that even Pedro and Jacko might not be able to bear the 100-year lifespan. Mom, please, for my sake. Shut up, Pocmusk. Perospero stopped Pocmus, who was wearing sunglasses. I didn't kill him immediately because I was taking care of your feelings. Are you going to let the majesty of the all nations be damaged? Charlotte Linlin, who was sitting on the huge cake chair, had a frightening light in her eyes. Yes, then it's dead. Or. Just as the soul spell was about to be completed, Katakuri, who was standing aside, frowned. Wait a minute. Mom. Ha. The aunt turned her head. She was very unhappy that someone interrupted her soul spell. Katakuri looked over and said, Mom, I see an incredible future, and something terrible is coming soon. A scary guy. In addition to Big Mom, everyone else also showed incredulous expressions. There are only a handful of people in this sea who can be called terrible guys by Katakuri. Who could be in Tato Land? Yo. Linlin. A slender figure stopped in the air, and the marine cloak behind him looked so dazzling. Well, it's you, Dark Dragon Dylan. Is it really okay to appear openly in all nations? The aunt raised her head slightly and looked at the figure in the sky. Since you are here, let's come down and drink tea together. Dylan's body slowly fell. There's no need to drink tea, otherwise I won't have any good results if the CP here is sent back. Dylan smiled and looked at his aunt. Let's get straight to the point, Linlin. I was entrusted by someone to take these two guys away. Dylan raised his hand and pointed at Pedro and Jabo on the court. Although in the years after the War of Flower Country, the world had rarely heard news of the Dark Dragon's actions, everyone present still held their breath. No one can underestimate this man. Well, are you here for this? Of course, but what are you going to exchange for it? The aunt was half lying on the chair and looking at Dylan. Let's do this. Dylan took out a devil fruit and threw it over. Kair's arm turned into glutinous rice and wrapped the fruit. I got it by chance. Paramecia, cream fruit. How about it? Yes, he can be exempted from the crime of invading Toland and stealing the historical text, but... The aunt raised her finger and pointed at a guy with slender legs and a round body next to her. He hit if you hurt my cotter, the account will be settled separately. Dylan's originally lazy demeanor dropped, and his eyes flashed with lightning. Is this how the account is settled? Linlin, call. Two conquerors' haki collided, and dozens of black thunder suddenly appeared in the air. What? You actually have the qualifications of a king and are as powerful as your mother. Except for the senior cotters, everyone else began to shake and then fainted during the collision between the two conquerors. Although Katakuri also possesses conqueror's haki, he is afraid to directly participate if he is released at this time. I'm afraid that the two haki will turn to attack him together in an instant. The strong wind roared on Cake Island, and the invisible pressure slowly tore apart various gourmet buildings. The eyes of Dylan and Auntie also began to become fierce, as if they were about to draw their swords at each other in the next second. Please wait. Pedro, who was restrained in the center, shouted. Dylan and the aunt made eye contact and then calmed down. After the pressure subsided, others understood why Katakuri, the leader of the three desert generals, was so afraid. Pedro gasped and then turned back to look at Dylan. Who is entrusting you? Dylan looked at the jaguar imprisoned on the ground by the candy pulp and said calmly, Tahir. Tahir. Not only Pedro, but also Pocmus and Jabo were surprised. Is that guy still alive? Dylan is the famous Marine Vice Admiral, and of course Pedro knows him, but he never thought that Tahir would actually choose such a path. No wonder the Cat Viper boss would say that guy is already dead. After Pedro glanced at this man with a notorious reputation, he turned to his aunt and said, Then. I'll repay you with my eyes. After saying that, Pedro raised his right hand and popped out his claws. A bloody eye appeared in Pedro's palm. Pedro endured the severe pain and asked, Is it enough? The aunt just glanced at Pedro's palm and then looked away, turning to Dylan. At this time, Dylan's eyes were already cold. Even if Conqueror's pressure did not break out, a more palpitating and trembling aura was brewing in his body. Well, that's it. Dylan stepped forward and kicked the candy wrapped around Pedro and Jabo to pieces, picked them up and floated into the sky. Before leaving, Dylan glanced down at the Cake Island, but in the end said nothing, just sneered disdainfully. On Cake Island, Katakuri looked thoughtfully at the distant lightning in the sky. Looking back at Pokemus, who had both disappointment and relief on his face, Katakuri sighed inwardly. In the air, Dylan glanced at Pedro, whose left eye was bleeding profusely, and asked, "Did you lose your eyeball?" "Not yet, not yet. Cover your armor and protect your important parts. The journey ahead may be a bit exciting." Pedro and Jabo, who were being carried by him on both sides, were stunned for a moment. Then they remembered the rumors about this man and quickly protected themselves with armed colors. G5 base. Pedro looked at his completely recovered eyes with some disbelief. Beside him, Jabo's eyes were full of joy. "Brother Pedro, that's great." Tahir sat on the other side and looked at the two people with a smile. Tahir. Pedro's face was complicated. This was his best friend since childhood, a friend full of courage, wisdom, and talent. He actually became a Marine. "Brother Pedro, it doesn't have to be like this. You and I are both pursuing our own hope and stage. There may be differences, but we are still close friends, right?" Pedro was silent for a moment. "Where is Boss Cat Viper?" Tahir smiled bitterly. "Didn't he say that I was dead?" Having said that, after a moment of hesitation, Pedro said, "Boss Cat Viper still misses you very much. He often looks at the sea alone at the edge of Zoo. Everyone knows that he is waiting for you to return." Tahir tightened his fist. As a teenager, he was the most talented boy in Ziuau, so he was deeply loved by the shopkeeper Cat Viper. Unlike other fur people, Tahir likes to read books. From books, he can always find many different ways of thinking. When Tahir asked Cat Viper one day why can't those people become Marines, Cat Viper couldn't give an answer, and only said, "This is Ziuau's tradition and agreement. There must be a reason, right? Are pirates more noble than Marines? Or is it just for the so-called freedom?" When Roger boarded the Zoo, Tahir had not seen him, but Tahir believed that even if he had, he would not be impressed by his fame for no reason like Pedro. It's romantic, but irrational. After Zoe searched for the answer for 3 years without success, the young Tahir decided to go to sea alone to find the answer. Although outside the Grand Line, others would regard him as a monster or a demon. But he also encountered many things, which made his doubts deeper. Why does Zoe have such tradition and promise? In this world, pirates obviously cause more harm. One Piece Roger may be considered a hero, but he is definitely not a hero. 10 years ago, when the adult Tahir returned to Zoe, he told the owner of Cat Viper what he saw and heard, and what he got was furious and roaring. When he sought answers from Duke Inarashi, whom he thought was calmer and wiser, he was met with silence and alienation. "Come back with me." Pedro stared at Tahir and said in a deep voice, no matter what path you choose, as you said, aren't we still compatriots and close friends?" "Good." Tahir smiled gently and looked at Pedro. "Indeed." Chapter 35. Do you really don't need me to go? Dylan glanced at Tahir, who came to him to ask for leave. Tahir bowed slightly. "Although I have some differences with Boss Cat Viper due to ideological issues, I have been taken care of by him a lot since I was a child, and this is Ziuau's business after all." Dylan pondered for a moment, then took out a piece of paper from the drawer and tore off a corner. "I asked Shiryu to make a life card for you. If you don't report back in a month, I will go to Zoe to find you." "Good." When the three of them walked out of the G5 base, Pedro and Jabo bowed to Dylan. "Thank you very much." Dylan nodded and said nothing. 1 month later, Dylan carried Shura out of the office. Going alone. Shiryu and Tom stood up when they saw Dylan coming out. They are not worried about whether Dylan can face a country alone, but the problem is that the purpose of this trip is not to destroy the country, but to save people. His life card is only shrinking, not burning. It seems that he is imprisoned. It's not a big problem. I can go alone. The New World has also been in turmoil recently. Don't be too frequent in your recent hunting. Everything, let's talk about it when I get back. Learn. Dylan opened his palms, and in his palms a life card the size of a fingernail fluttered and flew in a certain direction. So. Beluga Forest. Tahir's feet were tied with 2 chains and locked in a stone room. Outside the stone house, Pedro sat cross-legged at the door. "Tahir, Can you really not change your mind? Tahir in the stone house didn't seem to hear. He just played with the small folding fan in his hand, but his face lost the elegance and calmness of the past. Today is the promised 1-month deadline, that man, coming soon. Outside the stone house, Pedro's face flashed with reluctance and struggle. How he wished he could support and encourage his best friend to pursue his own path and dreams like he did when he was a boy. During the dozens of days he was guarding here, he had more than once wanted to untie the special chains on Tahir and let him pursue his own freedom, but this time, for some reason, Cat Viper boss Yamato Inuarashi also warned him not to have any other thoughts. Otherwise, it will bring catastrophe to Xiuaohu. Besides, there's that guy next to him. Pedro looked at Sicilian, the musketeer captain sitting cross-legged on the other side. While Pedro was struggling with what had happened to his best friend, Sicilian on the other side of the stone door raised his head and looked at the sky. What is that? In the stone house, Tahir sighed. Pedro looked up too. In the sky, the dense black clouds have completely covered the sky above Xiuaohu, completely covering the huge body of the elephant master, as if the end is coming. Pedro's pupil shrank, remembering the rumors about a certain man. Outside Beluga Forest. Old cat. Old dog. Duke Inarashi and Nico Viper looked at each other and looked at the thunder clouds in the sky. When they imprisoned Tahir, Tahir told them about his 1-month appointment with Dark Dragon Dylan. So today, a cat and a dog are waiting outside the Beluga Forest. A cat and a dog stood facing the strong wind. Behind them, the soldiers of the Furry Principality were also waiting with solemn faces. Such a big battle. In the clouds, a lazy voice sounded. Then a bolt of lightning fell, and Dylan appeared opposite Inuarashi and Nico Viper. Where's Tahir? Even if I have followed heroes like Whitebeard, Roger, and Odin, and fought against Kaido. At this time, Inuarashi and Cat Viper couldn't help but feel a little nervous. After all, they are just ordinary crew members. Although they bear the name of the Red Scabbard 9 in Wano Kuni, what they are about to face now is a man with the power of a god or demon. Inuarashi stared at Dylan and said solemnly, Tahir is a member of Zou, he cannot serve the world government. Reason. Dylan looked around calmly, but did not find Tahir or Pedro. This is Arzuu's tradition. Cat Viper's fangs were exposed, and he, who was already grumpy, could no longer control himself. Humans have no right to interfere. Good. Dylan lowered his eyes. Others looked surprised when they heard this sentence. Is this person so easy to talk to? It doesn't seem to be as described by Pedro and the two bosses. Careful. Inuarashi and Nico Viper shouted. Inuarashi drew his sword, and Nico Viper raised his 3-pronged gun. I shouldn't reason with you. Dylan took a breath and his eyes moved. Let me see how talented the guys who have followed Whitebeard, Roger, and Odin are. Base. Shura unsheathed his sword, and the black and red sword flew out like a crescent moon. Boom. Although the huge slash was blocked by the cat and dog. But the power contained within directly shocked the two of them to the point of vomiting blood. When the others saw this, they popped out their sharp claws and prepared to rush forward. Stop. Back off. Cats and dogs made noises at the same time. Inuarashi raised his hand to wipe the bloodline from the corner of his mouth, and said to the others, this kind of battle is not something you can participate in. The outcome has nothing to do with you. Dylan sneered and looked at Inuarashi, the mocking look in his eyes seemed to be saying, doesn't it mean it doesn't matter if you say it doesn't matter? Inuarashi's breath was stagnant. Although they had never left Zou after escaping from Wano Kuni, they had also heard the legend of this man. Able to single-handedly defeat the red hair pirates who are as famous as Whitebeard. The clouds in the sky blocked out the sun, and Cat Viper shook its nose angrily. Damn it, if there was a moon. Then I'll give you the moon. Dylan raised his hand and waved, the clouds in the sky split into two, and the moon appeared above everyone's heads. Seeing this situation, not only did everyone feel no joy, but their mood became even heavier. Don't you care about Moon Lion? This man. After the cats and dogs looked at each other, they all looked towards the moon. At this point, there is no way out. As the power of the moon was poured into the two people's bodies, the cats and dogs' bodies changed rapidly. Not only did their bodies begin to swell, but even their fur began to grow crazily and turn white. Ready. When the two of them were completely transformed, Dylan chuckled. The lion in the moon is ordinary. Although samurai should not pay so much attention to personal honor and disgrace, but being so slighted will make us angry. Cats and dogs roared at the same time, rushing towards Dylan with rushing thunder and lightning. Playing thunder in front of Lao Zi. Dylan opened his palms forward, then closed them. The lightning that was originally wrapped around the cat and dog's body disappeared instantly. Taste Lao Zi's thunder. Dylan raised his eyebrows, and a deafening roar sounded. The turbulent thunderclouds in the sky shrank for a while, and then 2 lightning beams more than 10 meters thick fell down. The hair on the cats and dogs stood up, and the originally swift castration paused in the air. Innocent. Before the thunder hit the ground, with Dylan's thought, it exploded in midair and turned into countless tiny lightning bolts heading towards the cat and dog package. Thunder cutting. Seeing the lightning coming, the 2 of them were in midair and had no way to avoid it. The cat and the dog, with their knives and forks intertwined, tried their best to attack the lightning. Cut it. Show it to Lao Zi. Thunder roared, and large pieces of thunder poured down from the clouds, entangled and mixed with the originally huge thunder pillar. The thunder that was originally scattered around and was only as thick as a finger instantly became as thick as an arm. Try it and give it a try. Jing's yet. The lightning lights closed together to form a huge ball of light. The cat and dog's bodies trembled, even with the blessing of moon power they couldn't resist it. Hey! Hey! Meow! Ouch! 2 screams came from the light ball, and a smell of burning hair came out. Boom! Boom! The lightning dissipated. A cat and a dog fell from the sky back to their original state. Ready to fight. The musketeers and knight riders drew their weapons when they saw the cats and dogs defeated. Other fur tribes also began to gather thunder and lightning, and some even began to stare at the moon, preparing to transform. It seems that my Shura is going to drink blood today. Dylan grinned, and Shura seemed to feel Dylan's murderous intention and was also shaken. Dylan! An anxious shout came from inside the beluga forest. Tahir quickly ran towards the battlefield with Pedro's support. Seeing Tahir's weak look, Dylan raised his eyebrows. I'm fine. It's not them who abused me, it's me. Tahir came to the center of the battlefield and saluted Dylan, then turned around and looked at the compatriots and the cats and dogs lying on the ground. Please give me some time. Dylan raised his chin, signaling for him to help himself. Tahir walked over to Nico Viper and Inuarashi and helped them up. After the cat and dog calmed down, Tahir sat down in front of the cat and Viper, Duke Inuarashi, the boss of Nico Viper. Seeing that the 2 ignored him, Tahir smiled bitterly. I don't know what promise Zoe is keeping, and I don't know what kind of promise our clan has made with history. Whether history or legend, it is the past after all. For me, instead of waiting for some people and things to save the world, it is better to participate in it myself. Even if I fail in the end, even if I end up becoming a sinner in a certain sense. Then at least I tried hard and tried. The Duke and the boss are both men who followed Roger. Didn't Roger say, on this sea, the freest people are pirates? The originally silent cat and dog looked at Tahir in shock. How did you know? Someone told me. Tahir once overheard Dylan say this when he commented on Roger. The disdain on Dylan's face at that time still remains fresh in his memory. Today, I won't debate with the 2 bosses whether this sentence is right or wrong. I only want to ask one question. Tahir raised his head and stared into their eyes. Since a pirate is free, why should he stop others from pursuing his dreams? If so, where does that put the word freedom? Chapter 36. Faced with Tahir's question, the cat and dog were silent at the same time. Yes, if these illusory agreements and traditions are used to hinder young people's footsteps. What kind of freedom is that? But the centuries-old tradition of the fur tribe. Since you insist on serving the world government, an old voice sounded from far away. Sicilian, the captain of the musketeers, walked out slowly, supporting a wrinkled old man. Grandma Cat. Cat Viper's round body bounced and jumped to the old cat who had curled up into a ball. You. Granny Cat shook her hand to interrupt Viper Cat's question, and continued to walk slowly towards Tahir with Sicilian's support. We are isolated from the world. Only a handful of young people have left Zoe for hundreds of years, but they all abide by the agreement, not to serve the world government. Tahir, you were different from others when you were young, but I didn't expect you to embark on such a path. Grandma Cat panted slightly, as if every word she said was a huge burden for her. I allow you to leave Zoe. Grandma Cat raised her head, her narrow eyes shining brightly, but you have to return the fur tribe's token. Token. Grandma Cat looked lovingly at the child she had watched grow up, sighed, and then took out a crimson fruit tremblingly from her arms. Eat it and it will cut off everything between you and the furry tribe, everything. Dylan, who was standing behind, frowned. Is this old cat planning to poison someone? If he really let him poison Tahir, could he really go on a killing spree in Zoo? This guy Elephant Master. Although he is not afraid, if the Elephant Lord goes crazy because the fur tribe is exterminated, he may not be able to conquer it. Tahir looked at Grandma Cat's eyes, and for some reason, he seemed to see a hint of smile and encouragement in Grandma Cat's eyes. Mother-in-law. Tahir reached out and took the fruit and looked at Granny Cat. Grandma Cat nodded to him imperceptibly. As the red fruit entered his throat, Tahir's whole body tensed up, and then a strange numbness spread throughout his body. Dylan was watching him from a distance, and if anything went wrong, he would take Tahir away as quickly as possible. As long as he didn't die instantly or be chopped into pieces, Sher Ryman could help him recover. Haha! A hoarse roar came from Tahir's mouth, and a feeling like burning fire covered his whole body. Dylan's eyes widened in the distance. Tahir, the fur on his body is falling off? Inuarashi and Cat Viper's expressions were also full of disbelief, and the other fur tribe's faces were even more frightened. How is this going? Why? Tahir turned into a hairless monkey? When Tahir raised his head again, his animal ears, his face with fox features, and the down on his body all disappeared. Grandma Cat, you. Cat Viper pointed at Tahir, and then looked down at Granny Cat tremblingly. He is no longer a member of the fur clan and I have taken back his racial traits and his ability to use electricity. After speaking, Granny Cat slowly turned around and left, let him go wherever he wants to go and who he wants to be. Tahir raised his hand and looked around, then looked around. The surprised eyes of his compatriots made him feel heartbroken. Boss Cat Viper. Cat Viper waved her hand before he could say anything, that's not necessary. Since you are no longer a member of the fur tribe, any tradition or promise has nothing to do with you. Of course, your safety is also it has nothing to do with Zoo. After shaking his beard, Cat Viper finally sighed, just take care of yourself. Tahir. After that, the cat and dog left with the help of the musketeers and the knights. The others dispersed as well. The only ones left were Pedro and Jabo. Brother Pedro. Pedro stepped forward and held Tahir's shoulders, don't blame them, and have a good trip. Have you thought about it? Dylan looked at Tahir who became gentler and more restrained. His appearance has changed greatly, but his whole aura and demeanor remain the same as before. Tahir opened his palm, and the original sharp claws disappeared, leaving only slender bamboo-like fingers. Think about it, the power of electricity and the Lion of the Moon have been captured. Following you, I cannot lack strength. Dylan knocked on the table and stared at Tahir, who was more handsome, whiter, and more beautiful than before. Even without these two powers, your fighting power is not weak. Tahir shook his head, it's not enough. I can predict who the enemy will be in the future. With the little strength I have left, I can't be your strength. So, please give me strength, for new era. Looking at Tahir's soft face, the demon fox mask hanging on his waist, and the small folding fan next to the mask, Dylan chuckled. Sometimes, I also think that fate is really magical, so magical that it scares me. It even makes me feel like I am being manipulated. Dylan pulls a devil fruit out of the ring. This is one of two obtained from 5 elders in exchange for OPOP fruit. The first Ashura fruit has been given to Shiryu. This fruit, if I'm not wrong, is almost 100% compatible with you. Tahir was a little confused. Although he had read many books and seen some illustrations of devil fruit, he had never seen what this fruit looked like. Yes. Zoan, dog fruit, phantom beast species, Tamamo may form. See Circle Calendar 1519. Oh! Another amazing new person appears? It's Logia. Belmir and the others' habit of gathering in Dylan's room to chat has not changed, and Dylan has nothing to do about it. Logia's power? That's really powerful. Tom laughed at the side. When Dylan heard the word Logia, his chair that was shaking suddenly stopped. Come yet? Ace. It seems that I have rejected Shishibukai invitation. Really, shouldn't there be only 7 people in Shishibukai? Is it possible that some weak guy is going to be removed? It should be Moria. Shiryu crossed her legs and thought about it. Heavenly Yaksha and Sand Crocodile are also possible. I heard that they have been doing some bad things recently. Really, this channel is almost blocked by us. Heavenly Yaksha is always can find a way to break through the blockade. Tom, Dylan uncovered the newspaper on his face, find this new guy and try his quality. Don't beat him to death, he is the son of your old friend. Old friend. Tom was stunned for a moment, trying to remember which old friend had such a powerful descendant. Ah, your old friend, One Piece, Gold Roger. Chapter 37. The middle section of New World. Fire ring, boom. A fat body shot straight through the flames, grabbed Ace by the collar, and pushed him to the ground. Is that all? Newcomer. But, damn, this guy. The crew members of the Spade Pirates all looked shocked. Captain Ace, as a Logia user, was defeated so easily. The New World is very dangerous. If you're at this level, you'd better go back to the paradise. A crew member who had been hanging out in the New World for a long time looked at Tom and seemed to remember something, and his voice was slightly distorted. That guy, I remember. He is Boatman Tom under Dark Dragon. Legend has it that he can defeat Sea Knight Jinbei. Tom sat down with his legs crossed, took off a gourd from his waist, took a sip himself and threw the gourd to Ace. Ask them to step back, I have something to tell you. Ace raised his head in confusion. This man didn't seem to have much ill will towards him. Is he an old friend of the old man? After nodding to the crew members retreated. Tell me, what's the matter? Tom stared at Ace, smiling briefly, but then shook his head, you look nothing like him. Ace's pupil shrank, he is your father, Roger. Seeing Ace's horrified look, Tom grinned, don't panic, I'm not here to arrest you. Tom let out a long sigh, I once built the Golden Jackson for your father, but I was convicted and sentenced to death for it, and was later saved by a certain man. Dark Dragon Dylan. Yes, speaking of which, he is also from East Blue, and he seems to have known about your existence for a long time, but he has not done anything to you. It can be seen that he does not have much malice towards you. But Ace. Tom looked serious and said very seriously, East Blue is weak enough. There are Vice Admiral Garp and Roger's crew in the park to take care of you secretly, but start from here. Tom raised his hand and pointed at the sea behind him, there will be a complete lawless zone behind, remember, don't reveal your identity. Tom patted him on the shoulder, Dylan told me that in this sea, for now, power is the only thing. I hope you will remember it too. Besides. Tom stood up and walked towards the sea. Ace, next time we meet, we will be enemies. His combat skills are barely up to par, but he relies too much on fruit abilities. Tom was a little confused. Although Ace's physical skills were not systematic, he could see that he had good combat experience. Why would he abandon haki and physical skills and rely so much on devil fruit? As strong as Dylan, the fruit is only a small part of his strength. And Dylan often told them, haki is the foundation of all strength and the standard that determines the upper limit. Dylan shook his head and did not answer Tom's doubts. Ace's fate was already sealed, and even Garp was powerless to reverse it. Perhaps it was because Ace showed his determination to become a pirate when he was very young that Garp did not personally teach him and the Sun God. Now that you've met him and given him advice, let's put an end to your past with Roger, Tom. Tom nodded, that's right. I told him the same thing when I left. I'll go back to the headquarters. Those guys won't be able to stay idle. I'll leave G5 to you. Dylan stood up. He had only returned to the headquarters a handful of times in the past 2 days. Now that Ace appeared, the headquarters should have responded. Leave it to me, the loud one. As for Shiryu and Xiaomei, let them fight to their heart's content. Marine Ford. Living room. Ah, it's rare for you to come back once. Speaking of which, aren't you a Thunder Fruit user? It's easy to go from G5 to the headquarters, right? Do you think everyone is as idle as you? BD Kuzan, G5 is the New World branch. Despite Dylan's teasing, except for Vice Admiral Akainu and Sengoku still looked serious. Sengoku frowned, Dylan, I heard that your boatman Tom went to contact that newcomer. Dylan took out his cigarette lighter and glanced at Garp, who was sitting outside eating a donut. Don't you already know this kind of thing? Right? Mr. Garp. Crane Vice Admiral raised his head and looked at Dylan mysteriously, you have known about it for a long time, right? Dylan, you have known about it since you were at East Blue. Dylan puffed out smoke and said helplessly, yes, I already knew it, so what? Dylan spread his hands. Should I just kill him? You guys think too highly of me. Let's not even talk about whether I can kill him in East Blue, which seems calm but is actually full of undercurrents. If I really kill him. Dylan turned towards where Garp was sitting and raised his chin. If old man Garp wants to beat me to death, which one of you will help? The living room fell silent for a moment, not even Akinu spoke. So you don't have to look at me like this. Tom and Roger had a relationship. I asked him to visit the son of an old friend and cut off the entanglement between him and Roger. When he mentioned son of an old friend, Garp chewed donuts slower. Moreover, Dylan raised his head, people cannot choose their origin, nor should they be punished because of their origin. I don't agree with this call. After exhaling a puff of smoke, Dylan continued, the descendants of Marine may not necessarily be good people. For example, Old Man Garp, isn't his son the leader of the Revolutionary Army? The descendants of One Piece may not necessarily be evil people. Although Ace is still on the road to becoming a pirate. But in my justice, I treat everyone equally before doing evil. After hearing Dylan's words, everyone's eyes gathered. Crane Vice Admiral held his chin with both hands and looked at Dylan. Speaking of which, you are now a Vice Admiral, and you are a Special Vice Admiral designated by Marie Joyce, and you are qualified to erect a plaque. What kind of justice are you going to show, Dylan? Although it is an unconventional meeting, those currently gathered here can be said to be the absolute main force of Marine currently in service. Even the injured Zephyr looked at Dylan thoughtfully. In the first few years, he did not approve of Dylan's style because he felt that being too bloodthirsty was not the temperament a soldier should have. But after his recruit internship ship was attacked 4 years ago, his heart became even more violent than Dylan's. The tragic deaths of his students, wife, and children made Zephyr angry and crazy. But for now, it's just for pirates. After the espionage attack, Zephyr's attitude towards Dylan and even his behavior towards Akainu changed drastically. Pirates deserve to die. Dylan couldn't help but feel curious as he looked at the expressions of the Marshal, Admiral, Chief Instructor, and Chief Staff Officer around him. Why are you so serious? It's just a plaque, what does it mean? This is not just a plaque, it will be a way for you to show your attitude as a Marine Vice Admiral to other Marines in the world. Hey, isn't that right? Dylan pointed at Aokiji, what about this guy Kyuzan? When he was young, he was a hot-blooded justice. What has he become now? Of course there will be confusion on the way to pursue justice. We have experienced this, so we can understand it. Vice Admiral, he glanced at a circle of young people present. It's like taking an oath, it's really. Dylan turned his head and looked around at the crowd, and put away his playful expression, then, gentlemen, my justice is justice of peace. Pft. Pft ha ha ha. The first one to laugh was Garp. You're a notoriously cruel guy in Marine. Others also laughed. Indeed, as Garp said, Dylan and his G5 are more scary to pirates than Marineford in some aspects. After all, Marineford will not go out at will, but it is different in G5. No one in the entire Grand Line knows that the leader there, Dark Dragon Dylan, is a powerful Marine who can take on the Red Hair Pirates by himself. And except for the Dark Dragon, the other officers are also ridiculously powerful monsters. Shiryu of the Rain, Ein the Broken Moon, Tom the Boatman, Belmere. According to rumors, there is a great guy inside G5. Even those lawless rogue Marines talk about that guy with horror on their faces. Within G5, Shiryu, Belmere, and Anne like to hunt everywhere. Shipman Tom rarely leaves the G5 branch. So even if Dylan is often absent, no one dares to take advantage of G5. What's more, I later learned from the G5 people that there is a guy in the base who is even more scary than Tom. Thinking of this, the surrounding pirates sailed away without looking back. To stop fighting with force, in this chaotic era, only by using strength to eliminate evil can we have a chance to usher in peace. After saying this, Dylan stared at Garp, and their eyes met in the air. Although they are known as the two generations of patron saints of the East Blue, in fact Dylan believes that he and Garp still have fatal differences. Garp still has a strong sense of compassion and restraint there. Garp, who is powerful enough to suppress Roger, can only silently fight Marie Joyce by showing off and not being promoted. And I, before the storm of history strikes, I will definitely be able to accumulate enough strength to break the balance and solve it all at once from sky to sea. Dylan believes that Garp also knows some secret about history and fire, otherwise he would not be committed to balancing the power between the pirates and the world government. But this kind of thing. The old man and the young man looked at each other silently. For some reason, Dylan saw some helplessness in Garp's eyes. There is also some relief. Chapter 38. Since red-haired Shanks became the Emperor of the Sea, the pirates of the New World seem to have exerted their power at the same time under some kind of agreement. Most of the Marine and World Government forces have been squeezed out of the New World. Except for the GX Marine branch and the secret base of the CP organization, other Marine base and World Government forces have withdrawn from New World. The second half of the Grand Line, New World also basically became a lawless zone this year. In Marineford's office, Dylan looked at the huge map across his desk. Shishibukai guards the 7 routes of the paradise and is responsible for cleaning up trash fish. The middle part is guarded by Naval Headquarters, an ice lobby, impel down. In the second half, it can be considered a complete fall. Even if there is a special case like the G5 branch, it is still a drop in the ocean compared to the entire ocean. Above the clouds, countless lightning flashes surrounded Dylan's body. He did not use the elementalization of Logia's ability to relieve the stress on his body. Thunder and lightning kept moving up and down his body, and there were countless tiny lightning bolts swimming in every inch of muscle and every blood vessel inside his body. Ha! The extreme cold at an altitude of tens of thousands of meters kept his body in a state of tension and excitement at all times. The heart in his chest roared like a war drum, and the blood in his veins surged like a river. The moment Dylan opened his eyes, a huge oppressive aura spread out from his body. The thunderclouds that were originally as far as the eye could see began to gradually dissipate, and then the sky turned into a clear blue. After standing in the air and clenching his fists, Dylan looked at the vast sea below. Now that the restraint of the sea on him has been basically lifted, unless he commits suicide and goes to the deep sea like the Fishmen Island, ordinary sea areas and sea stones can only suppress his elementalization and ability use at best. As for Haki and his physical abilities, it's almost impossible to be locked out. And with Dylan's weapon color, even if he is cuffed by sea stone, he can easily tear it apart with Haki. Speed, strength, Haki, physical fitness, swordsmanship, and physical skills are all basically completed. As for vitality, I can only give up for the time being. As early as East Blue, Dylan had already roughly planned the route and direction. Thunder Fruit is also a very important part of it. Enel, although there are elements of plot killing in it, he himself is not very thorough in the development of Thunder Fruit. Are natural elements that have existed in the world forever, inferior to phantom beast species? The elements last forever, but what about the gods? Dylan had a confused look on his face and closed his eyes again. In the originally blue sky, thunderclouds rolled in again and gathered together. G5 branch. When Belmir and Anne dragged their exhausted bodies back to the branch, Dylan had not returned yet. Hey? Isn't that guy here? In the base, apart from the orderlies and those rogue marines, Sher Ryman was the only one cultivating plants. He went to practice. Tom and I are stationed at G5. Tom went to the dock today. The people at Vegapunk said that Dylan's car will be ready for acceptance in a few days. Practice? Do monsters need to practice too? Today, Tahir has lost the characteristics of the fur tribe, and the whole person looks more charming and agile. Although Dylan is required to wear a mask when in the presence of others, his natural traits are getting stronger and stronger. It even increased faster than his own cultivation speed. Therefore, most of the time, Tahir only meets with Tata or Tom who can remain unaffected by him. Next is Dylan and Shiryu who are extremely mentally tough. But Dylan occasionally used Tahir's powers to hone their mental fortitude. Although he has great talent, the effort he puts in is beyond our comparison. Tahir walked down the stairs holding on to the handrail. Just the breath coming from his swaying figure made the ordinary marines around him flee. Anne stared at Tahir's body, holding the autumn water tightly in his right hand, trying his best to resist this mysterious power. Ah! Tahir, your cultivation is not good either. Didn't Dylan say that if you can't perfectly control your charm ability, then your cultivation will always be lacking? That's right. Tahir leaned on the sofa and patted the small folding fan in his hand. He said that this kind of thing has nothing to do with the growth of strength, but more about the change of mood. Shen Shen Na. Belmir rolled her eyes at the charming beauty in front of her, then pulled Anne, who was still a little stiff, to go upstairs. Halfway through, Belmir smiled sweetly, if you need my help, I can accompany you to practice, any way you can. Anne had an incredible look on his face. Tahir turned to look at Belmir on the escalator and said very seriously, if there is really a need, I'll leave it to you then. You. Anne looked at the lazy Tahir below, and then at Belmir beside him. For a moment, some scenes that were not suitable for children were very natural. The land appeared in her mind. Seeing Anne trembling all over and his face flushed, Belmir secretly screamed something bad. This little sister doesn't have conqueror's haki, and she's a human woman, so it's hard to resist the charm of the vixen. Let's go back to the room. Sister will give you a good wash. After glancing at Belmir and Anne who disappeared in the corridor, Tahir looked away. What exactly is the so-called state of mind? Tahir raised a finger that was as slender as jade and as white as an onion. A purple flame rose from between his fingers. The Tamamo May fruit not only improves one's combat power, it also greatly improves one's appearance and temperament. The most terrible thing is that his natural charm ability is actually improving at an exaggerated speed. During this period of time, as long as Tom was in the fortress, Tahir himself basically stayed at home. The purpose was to free up more time to practice and balance the negative effects of charm. But the effect is not obvious. After all, the improvement of strength cannot be achieved overnight, but this weird charm ability is growing visibly with the naked eye every day. Dylan had told him before he left last time that relying solely on force for containment was not a good option. The charming aura cannot be controlled, and it is more due to his own insufficient state of mind. Only a little. This is Dylan's evaluation of him. As long as you break this shackles, you can truly control this ability, and even perfectly awaken the Tamamo May fruit. In the huge bathroom inside the base, Belmir and Anne were lying next to the bathtub. Belmir. New World has become more and more turbulent recently, and conflicts between the four emperors have become more and more frequent. We call. Belmir took off the towel on his face and looked up at the ceiling of the bathroom. Why are you thinking so much? To be a bit dejected, we can't become men like Dylan. Changing the world is far away from us. But. Belmir turned his head and looked at Anne. He chose us, and we also chose him. I believe he has the ability to change the world. There is no need to hesitate, as long as we follow his footsteps, there will be new things in this world. Dawn. Belmir stretched out his hand and pinched Anne's cheek. Didn't he say that? Only people with a pure heart are more likely to gain powerful power. Look at that guy Tom. Ever since he identified Dylan, he almost never will think about why. So he is stronger than any of us, not even Shiryu is his opponent. Although I'm not a swordsman, I have fought with many swordsmen, and I know many famous swordsmen, whether it's Shiryu, Red Hair, or Hawkeye. Anne wants to become a swordsman like them. The belief in appraisal is essential. Only in this way can we achieve what he said, kill everything. Chapter 39. As the pirate forces dominated by the four emperors expelled most of the world government forces from the New World, the division and competition for territory within the pirates also began in full swing. In addition to the shrinking territory of Red Hair pirates, other secondary players such as Whitebeard, Big Mom, 100 Beasts and other secondary players are in fierce conflict. Wano Kuni. Kaido, which has been shrinking in Onigashima for nearly 20 years, has also begun to expand outwards in the past few years. In recent years, there have been more frequent attacks. Edit the village. Dylan, dressed in regular clothes, strolled through the stinking village. Scientists are really full of imagination. Although Doflamingo lost the help of the little humans, he still partnered with Geisa to create the artificial devil fruit. As for Wano Kuni, Quinn had no obstruction from Dylan and naturally followed the development of history and opened a large weapons factory here. Dylan squatted by the river and checked. The content of metals and many chemicals in the river water seriously exceeded the limit. The surrounding plants were either dead or showing a strange grey-green color. Where is this? Really, I have drifted to such a strange place. A young voice sounded from the other side of the river bank, and Dylan turned and glanced. Wearing a cowboy hat and shirtless, Ace walked along the river bank while scratching his head. Seeing Dylan staring at him, Ace grinned. It turns out there is someone, please ask. This is Wano Kuni, the domain of Kaido of the Beasts. Ace frowned. Although he had only entered New World for less than a year, he had already heard of the reputation of 100 Beasts Kaido. I am Spade. No need for introduction, Ace, one of the purposes of my coming here is to meet you. Ha! Ace's eyes widened. He had no impression of this guy in front of him. He was so young. Wait a minute. Ace recalled what his friends who were born on the Grand Line said when they were on the ship. In the Grand Line, whether it's Paradise or New World, most pirates and marines try to kill each other, usually by defeating, imprisoning, or even recruiting them. However, there are two people who are definitely among them. Outside. Akainu Sakazuki, Dark Dragon Dylan. For pirates, there is almost no chance of survival once they meet these two people. Ace looked at the man squatting on the ground not far ahead and compared it with the profile picture in the newspaper in his memory. Oops. Drifted here. Dylan took out 2 bottles of the cider Sher Ryman brewed for him from the ring and threw one to Ace. Ace saw that he didn't seem as scary as the legend said, so he caught the bottle. Yes, I don't have a navigator yet, so I got lost when I encountered the current. By the way, Uncle Tom, is he your subordinate now? Well. Dylan took a sip of wine and looked at Ace with Madara's face. Why do you want to become a pirate? Ace was stunned for a moment. From Dylan's tone, he didn't feel anger or murderous intent. It seemed like it was a normal thing. Like, have you eaten today? Ace was silent for a moment. After he came to the Grand Line, he also heard many legends about Old Man Garp and the man in front of him. You know me. Dylan stood up and looked into the distance, knowing, in a sense, I know most of your experiences from the time you were born to now. So I am very surprised, why do you want to become a pirate? Dylan turned around and looked at Ace, want to pursue the so-called freedom? This is impossible, you are not Roger. Or, are you trying to prove something to the world for Roger? You. Ace tensed up, subconsciously preparing to fight. The identity of Roger's son. But then he remembered what Tom said, that man has known about your existence for a long time, and he doesn't have much ill will towards you. The temperature of his body dropped. Ace held the wine bottle tightly and was silent for a moment before saying, I want to know, does my existence have any meaning? What did Old Man Garp tell you? Ace was full of surprise, but still replied, he said that I won't know until I live. So what do you think? I don't know. Ace shook his head, everyone is hating and cursing that guy and cursing his blood. I'm very angry. Am I really guilty for this? In that case. Dylan glanced at him, you simply become a pirate, or even become the Pirate King. Then what? Destroy the world? Or announce something to the world? Ace was stunned for a moment. He had never thought about this question before. Perhaps the reason why he became a pirate was just because people hated him so much that he had never been masked before, and even wanted to torture him with various cruel methods. If the world is so unkind to me, why should I be kind to them? Want to destroy the world? Dylan's face was calm. Ace shook his head subconsciously. When I was a boy, I did hate the world, but I no longer think so. I just want to sail freely. Gather my friends and look for one piece. That's it. I understand. Dylan stood up and walked towards the village. Ace didn't know why, so he followed him naturally. Aren't you going to catch me? I'm not the one who caught you. Dylan glanced at Ace, who was much shorter than him. I am Marine, and I am not Old Man Garp. You have chosen your own destiny, and you have to face it yourself. Certainly. Call. Outlander. A large net fell from the sky, and Dylan stood still. Ace looked at the people who poked their heads out from all around, and his heart moved. A flame burned the vine net that rushed towards the two of them. It's a magician. The sallow-looking villagers were shocked when they saw the flames coming out of Ace's body. This is the power that only the Cotters of Ghost Island have. Ace glanced at Dylan. If it was just him, he wouldn't have taken action just now. But this man. Although I didn't feel any strong malice or murderous intention in the conversation with him just now. But all the legends about him prove that this man is definitely not a good man. If they anger him. Hello. Dylan looked at the villagers who were about to turn around and run away and called out to them. The villagers stiffened and turned around in horror. Some of the guys who were already weak from hunger even fainted. Them. Ace couldn't bear it. These people looked like pitiful ordinary people and shouldn't. Shut up. Dylan rolled his eyes at Ace. What kind of devil does this guy think he is? Dylan walked up to the villagers and looked at these poor people trembling with fright and fear. So pirates are just pirates. They don't even understand the most basic sustainable development. The world actually expects pirates to save it. It's just nonsense. After taking out a large amount of food from the ring and placing it on the ground, Dylan said to them, "These foods are well preserved and should be enough to support you for a while." And Dylan took out a few more bags of seeds. These were food seeds that he asked Leo to bring from Greenbit and were very easy to cultivate. These seeds are very easy to feed. I can't save them all at the moment, but I can help some. The people who were lying on the ground were all happy when they saw the food. One of the old men asked carefully, "My lord, you are not from Ghost Island?" Dylan shook his head, "I'm not. I'm here to find someone, Tengu Shanfeet." "Where is he?" "Fei Che." The old man looked at Dylan and Ace, and then nodded to them as if he had made up his mind. "Please come with me." The mountain behind Billy Village. Tengu Yamahitosu is wearing a mask and costume like a big Tengu, and is knitting a bamboo hat next to the wooden house. "Fei Che." Tengu Shanfei Te raised his head and looked at everyone. "They are." The old man described what happened by the river and then glanced at Dylan and Ace. "You are looking for Fei Che?" Ace was a little confused. In fact, he just followed Dylan here. He didn't know Timao Mountain and Tengu Mountain at all. Dylan untied the shura and handed it to the other party. "I asked the descendants of the Shimatsuki family to look at this knife before, but the guy was vague at the time, so I asked you to help me take a look." The moment Tengu Yamafei Te saw the shura scabbard, his eyes widened. "Shura? Oh? Is it some kind of famous sword?" Seeing the other party's reaction, Ace was a little confused. Tengu Yamafeet held shura in his hand and looked at it carefully before holding his breath and pulling out the blade. Without Dylan's suppression, the blade was filled with endless killing intent and bloody smell as soon as it was exposed. Even Ace felt suffocated. "This." Ding! Dylan raised his hand and flicked Shura's blade. The originally glowing scarlet blade instantly faded and turned into jet black. "Black knife." Tengu Yamafeeter looked at the man in front of him with some disbelief. The man who refined Shura into a black sword. How terrifying! What? Is there anything wrong with Shura making a black sword? After hesitating for a moment, Tengu Shanfei Te asked, "I would like to ask, Shura, did you refine the black sword? Or was it in this state when you got it?" Dylan nodded. "I captured this knife in a battle more than 10 years ago. At that time, its blade was still dark red. I used it for several years before turning it into black." "I see." Tengu Yamafeeter sheathed Shura and handed it back to Dylan. "I believe the Shimatsuki family has told you that it is one of the 12 skills of its supreme sharp sword, right?" "Yet." Narrow Eyes Kojiro did say that back then, but he seemed to have something unspeakable at the time, and Dylan didn't want to have anything to do with the Revolutionary Army at that time, so he left without staying longer. "Shura, among the supreme swordsmen, is also a very special being." Tengu Yamahitosu said in a deep voice, "The first generation Kaititsu that was forged by my ancestors is also among the supreme swords." "Do you know what it is?" "The supreme sharp knife." Dylan shook his head. The only supreme sharp swords he knew were Yet, first generation Kaititsu, Kong Yunkai, Ace, and the one he held in his own hand, Shura. Others, even if they are as strong as Chu Shui, Yan Mo, and Tianyu Yuzhan, are only in the sequence of sharp swords. In addition to having supreme forging technology and almost peerless raw materials, the biggest criterion for the supreme sword is that they all represent a certain kind of will, or power. Will. Hearing this word, Dylan frowned instinctively. He disliked fatalism very much. Born under a red flag and raised in the spring breeze, he believes that all destiny is the Jiki snake god. Although it is currently known that the phantom beast fruit may indeed contain some legendary will, Dylan is still a little bored once such a thing is attached to his head. "Laozi is not a happy boy chosen by so-and-so, stop doing this." "That's right. But not everyone can fully understand and discover the will within it. Just getting its recognition is very difficult. To refine them into black swords requires many times or even dozens of times more than ordinary famous swords. Time and emission nurture. As for what the will in it is, there is no way to say this. It can only be understood by the holder. However, I believe that you have been fully recognized by Shura." "Oh." Although his face was shrouded in a mask, one could still see the awe in Tengu Yamatoru's expression. "Shura is rumored to be the sword of a great warrior who once led all races to overthrow tyranny and eliminate evil." Chapter 40. "Master, there is suddenly a lot of delicious food in the village." A crisp voice sounded from the distant path, and Dylan smiled and turned his head. A little girl with purple hair was stumbling towards the wooden house holding a pile of food. Oh, it's Ayu, I already know it. A large pile of food blocked Ayu's view, and she did not see anyone else at the door of the cabin. When she staggered to the door and put down the food, she immediately raised her hands when she saw the tall Dylan and Ace. Eat, the food is not stolen, surrender, the little girl surrendered. Poof. Dylan laughed, took out the juice share Ryman brewed for him from the ring and handed it to Ayu's hand. Try it. No way. Dylan's face suddenly darkened, and before Ayu could react, Dylan said very seriously, it is very unhealthy to drink juice before filling your stomach. Ace next to him looked surprised. This guy. When it was getting late, Dylan, Ace, Tengu Yamahito and the village chief sat around the campfire in front of the wooden house. Ayu fell asleep on Dylan's lap, holding a piece of barbecue in his hand. Has the outside world changed so much? The village chief's face was dimmed and lit by the bonfire. Wano Kuni has been in seclusion for hundreds of years. Dylan listened to their chat while pulling firewood. Ace was mostly narrating the situation outside, and he rarely participated in it. Several major families in Wano Kuni. They are all deliberately closed to wait for those so-called bullshit legends. It's just stupid. And Odin is this idiot. Dylan shook his head. Odin, this idiot, is very powerful, but he really lacks the temperament of a strong man and the means of a leader of a country. Tengu Yamafei looked at Dylan sitting opposite, his expression unclear. After a moment of silence, he finally said, this general seems to be particularly fond of Ayu. After hearing this, Dylan lowered his head and glanced at the young Ayu with a gentle look in his eyes. Well, I like this child very much. Her life should not be so miserable. Dylan gently stroked Ayu's little head. Most children in this world didn't seem to have a happy childhood. But most children can face life bravely. Nami, Nakajao, Sabo, Hancock, Minga, Ayu, Luo. These people all had very unfortunate childhoods, but they were able to change their destiny in their own way. Only Momonosuke, this idiot, could only bury his head in a woman's breasts besides crying. Simple trash is no longer enough to describe him. It is true. If you live in this kind of place all year round, not only will you not have enough to eat, your health and lifespan will also be greatly affected. Tengu Yamafei stared at Ayu who was sleeping soundly, his expression full of guilt and love. Ace turned to look at Dylan, his expression slightly moved. But thinking about Wanakuni's location and the customs here, he finally swallowed his words. Although Dylan certainly meant no harm to him, it seemed inappropriate to ask him to save Wano Kuni rashly. And after all, this is the middle part of the new world, and it is now almost out of the control of the world government. Thinking of this, Ace clenched his fists tightly and thought to himself, 100 beasts Kaido. After staying in Walai village for 2 weeks, Dylan and Ace bid farewell to the villagers. Brother Ace, brother Dylan. Ayu looked at these two gentle elder brothers with tears in her eyes. When can I go to see? Ace knelt down and touched Ayu's head. When I come back here, I will definitely turn this country into a place where you can have enough to eat. Dylan pursed his lips and said nothing. However, the great Tengu Fei Tetsu on the side looked struggling. Just as the two were about to leave, the great Tengu Fei Tetsu suddenly said, General, can you take Ayu away? Not only Dylan, but also Ace, Ayu and the village chief all looked puzzled. Ace was shocked for a moment and then felt relieved. After all, he was still a new pirate and had no fixed place to live. And he did feel that in the new world, it would be difficult to protect Ayu's thoughtfulness with his strength, but this guy was different. The entire sea was in awe of his reputation, and even the legendary pirates did not dare to set foot near the G5 branch easily. If there, Ayu will live a happy life. Sure. Dylan also squatted down and held Ayu's shoulders, but first, Ayu must be willing. Ayu, whose clothes were full of patches, looked a little reserved. She longed for the world outside, but she couldn't let go of her aging master. Ayu. Tengu Yamahitosu walked up to Ayu and took off his sword from behind, second generation Kaiditsu. The world has changed so much, so you can go see the outside world on behalf of all of us. One day, I hope you can return to Wano Kuni. Tell us about your wonderful journey across the ocean. Dylan frowned. This knife. Of course he knew the origin of this sword, but the Ghost Sword series was a demon sword. Without strong luck and strength, it would be difficult to subdue it. One bad move might even bite the owner. Tengu Shanfeet shook his head, this sword is not for Au, but for the general. Dylan was about to refuse, but Tengu Yama fighter intercepted him. Yes, it was given to the general. The 20-year period predicted by Madame Shi was approaching. I would like to use this sword as a thank you gift from the village of Walai. Do you think the person who predicted it when Kojiki was referring to me? Au and Ace next to them both looked confused. They couldn't understand their conversation at all. However, the village chief looked a little solemn. It may not be His Majesty the General. Even if he is not, then this sword will be regarded as the support money I will give to Au as my master. Dylan pondered for a moment and then took over second-generation Kaititsu. Okay. In that case, when the prophecy comes, I will definitely come. Regardless of whether it is led by me or not, for the sake of Au and everyone, I will also contribute to this country. When Dylan led Au towards the outside of the village, Au turned back 3 times every step. Although he decided to follow his master's arrangements and go to sea, how could he let go of the grace of upbringing so easily? Master, everyone. Dylan bent down and hugged Au, gently patting her back to comfort her. Next to the hidden port, an unmarked ship has docked there. Vice Admiral. 2 masked weirdos felt Dylan's breath and jumped from the side of the ship. Dylan ignored them, but jumped onto the boat with Au and touched Au's head. Wait for me here. That idiot Ace is going to cause trouble. I'll go take a look and come back. Au hugged Dylan and handed her the juice and nodded. After getting Au's answer, Dylan turned back to CP0 and said, protect her and don't talk too much. Otherwise I will take off your mouth. Dylan and Ace chose different paths when they left Wengli village. Seeing Ace's furious look, Dylan knew that this guy was going to Ghost Island. But now that Kaido and the senior officials are gone, the only one who can fight is Yamato. Yamato. Tisk. By the time Dylan arrived at the edge of Ghost Island, these 2 fools were already drinking. I can't leave here, father, that BD. As long as I step out of Ghost Island, this chain will explode. Ace, one day in the future, will I be able to be free and go on adventures in the sea? Of course, Yamato. I will. The sea is so vast and wonderful. You will definitely be able to get out of this place and find your own life. Tread. Tread. Who is it? Yamato immediately became alert as soon as he heard the footsteps. When Dylan appeared around the corner with Shura on his arm, Ace was surprised at first, and then his face lit up with joy. Is it you? Haven't you left yet? Yet? Is he an acquaintance of yours? Ace. Ace scratched his head, no. Not really, but... Ace stood up and ran to Dylan, if you say it, you can definitely untie Yamato, right? Please. After speaking, Ace bent down and bowed deeply to Dylan. Restraint. Dylan walked past Ace and came to Yamato. Is this one? Is it a positioning bomb made by Quinn? Yamato's 2 wrists were trapped by huge alloy shackles, which made a quick sound whenever he moved. Yes, that's it. After entering the New World for more than a year, Ace has heard too many legends about this man. With his strength, he can definitely save Yamato. Well. Dylan reached out and held one of the shackles, feeling the structure before the military color penetrated into it. Click. The shackles deformed in response, then broke and fell off. Really, really solved? Great Yamato. Dylan glanced back at Ace, you're too happy, kid. I'm not going to untie the other one. Why? Ace and Yamato spoke at the same time, both looking disappointed. Freedom has never been so within reach. But it's still out of reach. Seeing Yamato's disappointed look, Dylan pondered for a moment and then said, this kind of thing certainly depends on my mood, doesn't it? But if you insist on a reason. First, this guy is deeply influenced by that idiot Odin, and I don't like it. Secondly, it's also a form of protection for her. You'll understand next time we meet, Ace. Hearing Dylan's words, Yamato, who was originally disappointed, stood up immediately, and the remaining shackles made a sound with her violent movements. Why insult Odin, a man like him? Shut up. Dylan glared at Yamato, what kind of man is he? As a son, he left his elderly father to go to sea for the so-called freedom, put his father in danger and then died. After returning home, the enemy's power actually believed in those boring promises and scams, and danced naked for several years, causing his prestige to be completely lost. As a monarch, because of the illusion that a good-for-nothing son was kidnapped, he was distracted from fighting, causing the entire Wano Kuni to fall. It is clear that everyone else has made a death determination to join him in overthrowing Kaido's rule, but what about him? Do you still believe in this nonsense of let everyone leave after holding on for an hour? As a son, father, husband, and master, he is a failure and a complete waste. Yamato was shaken by Dylan's words. Do you still believe in freedom? Do you still want to be Kojiki Oden? Such a waste, you even choose to inherit his name and last wish? Just because of 2 diaries. Dylan's eyes were on fire. Why should I help you? What kind of despicable person would keep a diary? Think carefully, Yamato. In addition to the so-called freedom, people must also bear certain responsibilities. Dylan turned around and walked to the shore. A piece of trash like Odin is useless except for having a little power. Chapter 41. Yes, it's within Wano Kuni territory, maybe even within the boundaries of Wenli village. Send your people to search for it, but don't disturb the lives of the villagers there. After hanging up the green-gray phone bug, Dylan rubbed Au's head. Is there anything in Wenli village that brother Dylan cares about? Au raised her little face and asked Dylan. Dylan didn't avoid him when he called just now. Well, it sounds like that thing belongs to you, but now that you are going to sea with me, in order to prevent accidents, I asked someone to get it for you. What Dylan was talking about was the fruit that originally belonged to Au, the meatball fruit. Although Au may not be allowed to take it in the plan, it can be used as an alternative. One of the fruits originally agreed upon with CP0, the big mouth god fruit, has been eaten by Yamato. This made Dylan punch CP0 hard and sarcastic. CP0 can only be submissive and dare not speak. After arriving at G5, there will be many interesting friends, and Au can do whatever she wants. Of course, she can't do bad things. I want to become a kunoichi. Is that okay? Oh? Female ninja? You're so powerful, Au. Then you have to eat more. If you don't have a good body, you can't become an excellent ninja. The CP0s in charge of security on both sides of the deck looked at each other. This guy, does he still have such a side? Well, this little girl may be one of the means to restrain the dark dragon. Put away your dangerous thoughts, I don't want to see blood in front of the child. Dylan raised his eyelids and glanced at CP0 as if nothing had happened. I'm not a waste like Odin. If you dare to use the lives of my family to threaten me, then I will let you kill them, but after that, I will let you stay in hell forever. CP0 was stared at by Dylan's cold eyes and felt cold all over. He said with some embarrassment, of course not. Dylan Vice Admiral is the special Vice Admiral designated by Pangu Palace and is also our partner. Stop talking about unnecessary nonsense and go to the cabin. With Lao Zi here, it's not your turn to be on guard here. G5 branch. When Dylan led Au into the base, everyone realized it. The real number 2 of this base appeared. Except for Shiryu who did not return from the hunt, the core members were all at the base and came out to greet him when they sensed Dylan's aura. Oh, where's the kid? So cute. Is it your child, Dylan? Tahir examined Au's outfit and then looked up at Dylan, Wanakuni's child. Well, her education will be left to you. As for her life, she will be with Sherry Man. The whole sea knew that the G5 branch had welcomed his little princess. There were even rumors that she was the daughter of Dark Dragon Dylan, and some people who had a good relationship with Dylan even came to congratulate him. Hey, BD Kuzan, did you come here empty-handed? Ah? I'm very poor. Who is this guy? Who let him in? Go and circle the island 100 times. At this time, the Whitebeard pirates are far away in the depths of the New World. Dad, let's go to Wano Kuni. I must save that country. Odin. Whitebeard had mixed feelings. That man never asked for help from himself or Roger's crew members until his death. What is he waiting for? Looking at Ace dancing below, Whitebeard raised his fist. Kaido, that's a man that even Odin can't defeat. Don't be too arrogant. Kid. After giving Ace a lesson, Whitebeard also fell into deep thought. His physical condition is no longer what it used to be, and since this is Odin's own choice, let's take another look. In the cabin, an angry Ace was eating too much, and Margiao walked up to him and patted his shoulder. Ace, don't blame Daddy, he is, in pain too. In that case. Margiao sat down next to him and looked out the window, Odin used to be our friend, the captain of Whitebeard's 2nd Division. Before you, he was him. What? You don't know, right? But Odin never asked us or Roger for help after he disembarked from Roger and returned to Wano Kuni. Maybe he has his own ideas and choices. Ace was a little surprised, but then asked, now that Odin has been dead for so many years, Wano Kuni. Ace. Margiao sighed, you have only been on the ship not long ago, but Dad is almost 70 years old. He has experienced too many life and death battles when he was young. There are almost countless hidden injuries to the body, and shock fruit's backlash on the user itself is also very serious. Margiao looked at Ace seriously, Dad's physical condition can no longer support him in too fierce a battle. Once Dad falls, not only us and his pirate group, but also the balance of the entire new world will be broken. Because once the man standing in front of them falls, whether it's the 100 Beasts, Auntie, or someone else, an unstoppable war will immediately start. So we can't attack rashly until the moment of life and death. Ace. Dad's reputation still suppresses New World, but he can't reveal his flaws. So, don't embarrass him. After hearing Margiao's words, Ace couldn't calm down for a long time. He thought of the equally famous man and Old Man Garp. Do they share the same concerns? No. Maybe Old Man Garp will. But that man, Dark Dragon Dylan, he definitely doesn't have this problem now, and even in the next few decades, his strength will only get stronger and stronger. Could it be that he is the one who saves Wano Kuni? Marine Ford. Aokiji office. To East Blue? Smoker. Ah. I'm going to Logue Town, I said I want to experience it. Dylan himself has rarely been back to Marineford in recent years, and he doesn't know much about Smoker's actions. However, he also learned from some side information that Smoker has made some progress in recent years. At least the use of 6 styles and haki has achieved certain results. But I'm afraid he is still no match for Dragon, so even if he goes to Logue Town, he can't stop Straw Hat from going to sea. What? East Blue should be fine, right? How do I know? Dylan glanced at Aokiji angrily, he is dozens of years old, and he is Logia, does he still need someone to protect him? Dylan's attitude towards Smoker has always made Aokiji strange. It feels like Dylan does not reject Smoker like other Marines, but more like a feeling of dissatisfaction with his strength. Speaking of which, Smoke Fruit is also Logia, and the development of Smoker is really poor. By the way, there is someone who admires you very much. Do you want to meet him? Admire me? Dylan was stunned. He rarely returns to his headquarters. Although there are many people who know him, if you want to admire him, there shouldn't be many people, right? Is he a fighting maniac? Is there such a person in this department? She's a chief CAO from Smoker, a female swordsman. Oh, Tashiji? Want to learn my swordsmanship? The short-haired Tashiji was very excited when he saw Dylan and ran up to him and saluted him. Dylan Vice Admiral. I am Tashiji, the commander of the headquarters. As a marine swordsman, I admire you very much. Ah, it's such an honor, Mr. Tashiji so. Dylan nodded encouragingly. At this time, Tashiji still looked like a girl, with short hair and a dull look on her face. Tashiji was startled when he saw the shura on Dylan's waist. Shura. Oh? Do you recognize it? This girl with 4 eyes was indeed a lover of famous swords, and she recognized the shura on her waist at a glance. Dylan Vice Admiral. I can, be very presumptuous. Can I see your saber? Dylan smiled slightly, hey? Yes, but you have to be careful. Dylan untied the shura and handed it to Tashiji with a teasing look in his eyes. Smoker next to him was chewing a cigar. Now he has been promoted to the rank of captain, but he still has not changed his bad temper. One of the 12 skills of the Supreme Sharp Sword, Shura. Tashiji carefully observed Shura's scabbard and murmured, among the recorded Supreme Swords, Shura is also an extremely mysterious and special existence. It is rumored that he represents hellish killing on the one hand, but at the same time he represents justice that crushes power and evil. Don't say that nonsense, Tashiji. I won't be able to explain it to the higher UPS. Dylan shook his head. He didn't know if the 5 elders had any research on famous swords, but he believed that there must be professionals in Marie Joyce. Since first generation Kaititsu was in the hands of the 5 elders, the other party must not know anything about it. But there are some things that cannot be said directly. Dylan was also a little confused when he thought of this. Could it be that Shura really chose him on his own initiative, or was there really so-called fate arranging all this? Chapter 42. G5 Branch. Dylan, when are you going back to East Blue? Dylan shook the newspaper and raised his head to look at Belmir, who asked, "What are you doing? If you have something to do, you can go back by yourself. You don't need me to escort you from here to East Blue, right? It still doesn't work, you guy, can't you fly? Help me bring something back to Nami and Nakajao." Dylan glanced at her with disgust. "It's not easy for you to fly. I also have a fruit here, the one with wings. Do you want to eat it?" Belmir shook his head like a rattle. "No. I don't want to become a landlubber. Besides, there are enough landlubbers in G5 now." Dylan put down the newspaper and put his hands on the table. It's not like he hasn't considered giving the Garuda fruit to Belmir, but eating the fruit to become a person with abilities must first be based on their own willingness. And what Belmir said makes sense. For G5, having all players with abilities may not be a good thing. What to bring? Belmir took out a stack of banknotes and put them on the table. "Bring some money back to them. This is my savings over the past few years." Dylan raised his head in surprise. "Money? Is this necessary? Even if they spend as much as celestial dragons, I can still support them for several lifetimes." This is indeed true. As Aokiji said, Dylan's wealth now has simply reached an astonishing level. Moreover, the shipyard next to his shipyard has been expanded into an alloy processing factory, which cooperates with the scientific force of naval headquarters, and the daily income is very considerable. Belmir once again refuted Dylan seriously. She looked at Dylan seriously and said, "Of course I know how much you love them, but this is what a mother should do. Besides, I don't want you to indulge them too much." "Well, I understand." After a slight nod, Dylan picked up the money on the table. When he looked back and saw Belmir, he suddenly regretted it. Belmir was a woman after all. If she really has to meet Nami on the battlefield in the future, will she really be able to firm up her position and beliefs? Perhaps. Perhaps it was the hesitation and struggle on Dylan's expression at this moment that touched Belmir. Although there was a slight height difference between him and Dylan, Belmir patted Dylan's arm. "Dylan, don't look down on me because I'm a woman. You have to believe in me and us. No matter what abyss or hell you face in the future, we will follow you wherever you go." Dylan tensed up, and then looked at Belmir, who was the first person he selected and the most talented person so far. What if it's Nami? Dylan's eyes couldn't hide his disappointment, even a little helpless anger. To Dylan's surprise, Belmir didn't seem surprised. She took a deep breath from the cigarette and then looked in the direction of East Blue and said, "Is it really Nami?" "But..." Belmir turned around with a firm expression, "Even if it's Nami, if she chooses the wrong life, then it's up to me to correct it. I will arrest her with my own hands. If she falls into the devil's path, I will kill her with my own hands." Dylan. In an instant, the Conqueror's haki on Belmir went crazy high. "I promised you, I will never hesitate. This. It is also my obligation as a mother." Dylan looked at Belmir with a determined expression, then sighed and said, "Don't tell Nakajao yet, and don't try to stop anything. East Blue is, in some ways, the most dangerous place in the world." It was the first time in so many years that Belmir had seen Dylan look so serious and depressed. As early as the first year she knew Dylan, she knew that Dylan had always had unparalleled confidence. Of course, the strength he displayed was indeed worthy of this confidence. It was only at this moment that Belmir suddenly understood that the world might be far from what she saw and imagined. A few years ago, when Dylan talked about the Emperors of the Sea, there was no fear or uneasiness in his expression. For her and Shiryu, Dylan even beat the red-haired Shanks alone in West Blue, who had not yet joined the 4 Emperors at that time. The group was almost wiped out. And usually Dylan doesn't deliberately avoid many things. For example, the deal with Big Mom, and the boy he has followed for more than 10 years in East Blue. The current captain of the 2nd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates, Fire Fist Ace, is actually the son of Gol D Roger. This kind of thing. None of this moved Dylan, except today when he talked about Nami's future. It seemed that some shocking secret had been touched, which forced Dylan, who had always been extremely confident, to show such a serious expression. "Nami, does she have any secrets?" Still, I have tried to change Nami's fate over the years, but I have failed. At this point, it is impossible to change anything. Mark my words, Belmere, you are not allowed to return to East Blue within 2 years. Otherwise, you might die. Dylan adjusted his collar and walked heavily towards the balcony. Don't let me lose more relatives. Now that the Sun God has grown up, even Dylan himself is afraid of the hidden power. Once Belmere touches the Sun God, I am afraid that it will immediately alert them and may even be directly obliterated. After all, Belmere is not the trash fish on the surface of East Blue who can give the Sun God whoring experience. After packing up the gifts that Belmere brought to Kokoyashi village, Dylan turned into lightning and disappeared from the sky. Belmere stood on the balcony, watching the fading light, pursed her lips tightly and said nothing. The first half of the Grand Line. Dylan hovered in the air and pulled out a map. Many red lines have been drawn densely on the map, leaving only a few routes with small gaps. It should be on one of these routes, Vermio. The issue of Golden Lion has been on his mind since he came to Grand Line. Every time he returns to East Blue, he will record the route in order to confirm the location of the floating sky island Vermio. Shiki. The guy who inherited Roxwell was actually defeated by that brat with that boring move. It seems that the accident he encountered during the naval battle of Etwall greatly damaged his strength. Not only is it impossible to activate Haki, but the rudder may also bring other restrictions and harm to him. After all, it's stuck in my head. The guy who was as famous as Whitebeard and Roger actually lost to a balloon. How sad. After slowly drawing a line on the map, Dylan's figure flashed and flew high into the sky. Vermilo. The Golden Lion sits cross-legged on the edge of the island and stares at the sea. Dr. Indigo walked to Golden Lion with his hands in his pockets. Although he had a funny face, the aura exuding from Dr. Indigo at this moment made the murderers around him fear him and they fled away. Cockle, do you miss me again? Shiki. No. Golden Lion sat where he was, still looking into the distance. I'm thinking, can the guys at sea nowadays still be called pirates? Hey? Why do you say that? Aren't these guys Linlin, Newgate, and Kaido doing a good job? Dr. Indigo walked to Golden Lion and sat down, not caring that the few inches in front of him were thousands of feet high in the sky. TCH, who Golden Lion exhaled a puff of smoke and said with some disdain, although this guy Newgate is strong enough, he is just like me. He has huge physical problems and I'm afraid he won't be able to hold on for long. No. All it takes is an all-out battle to kill him. As for Linlin and Kaido, they are not old enough to peek into that position. Why? The problem of those two guys was exposed in rocks back then. They may have achieved something, but they will never become kings. This sea has forgotten the power and fear of pirates. They have forgotten what a real pirate is. As soon as Golden Lion finished speaking, a cold voice came from afar. Then tell me what a real pirate is. Chapter 43. A gust of wind passed by, and Dylan stopped in front of the Golden Lion. The map in his hand had been crushed into pieces and scattered in the wind. Kokali is the Marine Vice Admiral Dark Dragon who has been very popular in recent years. Facing Dylan, Dr. Indigo was not too nervous and still looked at the other person with his hands in his bags. Dylan looked past the two of them towards the island. After observing for a while, Dylan looked away and looked at the Golden Lion. It's very ordinary, Shiki, I'm not trying to hit you. If these cats and dogs are thrown into East Blue, they will cause turmoil for a day or two at most, but if you want to destroy East Blue, it's simply a foolish dream. Gee ha 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 ha, you are such an arrogant brat. Sometimes Laozi really hates you guys from East Blue. Golden Lion's body slowly floated up, and his expression began to become serious. Come to get Laozi's head? Marine brat. Dylan took out the shura and flicked it, with a calm expression. The answer is correct, but there is no reward. Ding! The shura in Dylan's hand collided with the wood on Golden Lion's right foot. After a slight shock, Golden Lion flew backwards and then stopped in mid-air. Dylan stared at the gloomy Golden Lion and smiled. It seems that the rudder has done a lot of harm to your body. Now you can't even activate Haki? Can you only rely on the fruit ability? That's enough for a brat like you. The Golden Lion roared loudly, and the ground behind him began to churn, and soon it gathered into the shape of several lion heads and crushed towards Dylan. Lion Majesty, Earth Coiling. Just as the huge rock lion head approached Dylan, a red light flashed, and the lion heads were split into two and flew up in the air. The moment the lion's head flew up, a series of crescent-shaped slashes flew from behind the crack. Lion, Thousand Slice Valley. Dylan's eyes darkened. The slashes in front were denser than imagined, almost forming an unavoidable net of slashes. Shura stood across, and the lightning wrapped around Shura's sword. Convict sin and destroy delusion. The same intensive slashes exploded forward, and the lion's head in the middle was instantly sliced into pieces by the successive collisions. Golden Lion raised his right hand and pressed it hard. In an instant, the entire floating island roared, and soil, rocks, and trees floated into the air. Dylan stopped in midair and looked at the gradually gathering debris. What? Planetary devastation. A flash of lightning flashed, and before the debris floating in the air had finished gathering, Dylan took the lead and came to the Golden Lion. Golden Lion had no time to dodge, and his years of fighting instinct also made him feel a sense of crisis. Golden Lion, who was too late to release the ability move, could only let the debris fall back to the ground, while he raised his legs and crossed his swords. Ding! Blocked. Golden Lion was still frightened. Although Haki was restricted by old injuries, he also felt that if he was hit by this blow, he might almost have to give an account. No, it's not blocked. Dylan, who had his hands on the hilt of Shura's knife, raised his head and glanced at the Golden Lion. A black-red aura burst out from the tip of Shura's knife, instantly drowning the Golden Lion suspended in the air. Conviction. Nahi Bridge. The slashes, as thin as silk threads, penetrated Golden Lion's body. Without Haki's protection, Golden Lion instantly turned into a bloody man. Aha! The endless slashes like a river pierced his body crazily. After a few seconds, even as strong as the Golden Lion, he finally couldn't hold on and fell heavily to the ground. Dr. Indigo in the distance sighed, it failed. Shiki! Ha, ha, you little brat, ha! The Golden Lion fell to the ground and gasped, barely holding up his body and looking at Dylan who landed. Unexpectedly, Laozi lost to the guys from East Blue again. Golden Lion, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, took off the two swords from his legs and stuck them on the ground. These are two good swords, take them, don't waste them. Seeing the confused look in Dylan's eyes, Golden Lion laughed, gee ha 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 ha, don't get me wrong, Laozi didn't use them to buy his life. After losing Haki, Laozi's life as a pirate is almost over. Golden Lion stared at Dylan with a ferocious smile on his face, although you brat is a marine, Laozi feels a lot of interesting things in you. Gee ha ha ha. This guy Newgate will only block the new world and block the pace of the old era, and Kaido and Linlin are not qualified. Only Laozi has inherited Rock's will. Dylan looked at the dancing Golden Lion and wondered why he was so happy. You guys, you don't think I want to inherit the will of a guy like Rock's now, do you? No. Our paths are different. But the end point is the same. Come on. Marine, take Laozi's head and become your ladder to a higher stage. With guys like you, the world. It is destined not to be boring. Dylan nodded and took out the phone bug. Kuzan, get ready. Wearing an eye patch, the phone bug replied briefly with understood and then closed his eyes. Any last words? Dylan carried Shura forward and looked at the Golden Lion who was covered in blood but looked excited. Once people fall into some kind of obsession or madness, they will indeed become unreasonable. Last words. Golden Lion smiled mysteriously. You are very strong, kid, but it is not enough. If you want to truly stand at the top of the world, you still have something to do. Only then will you be qualified to fight against the world. Only then will you be qualified to fight against the world. Get in touch with real history. You're really old, Shiki. Dylan held up Shura. I have no interest in history. Because history is up to me, laugh. Golden Lion's heads flew up. But the face of the human head in the sky was full of surprise and smile. As the life of the Golden Lion disappeared, more than 10 small islands floating in the air began to shake, and then fell together towards the sea below. Dylan stopped in the air and glanced at Dr. Indigo sitting on the top of the mountain. There was no fear or loss on his face, only calmness. It seems that this guy has also lost his fighting spirit and belief in living. As a huge shadow fell on the sea, Aokiji standing on the sea also showed a look of shock. Allah, this has gone too far. Boom. More than 10 islands fell at the same time, causing huge waves on the sea. Just when the wave reached its peak, Aokiji squatted down and put his hand into the sea. Ice Age. Kaka. Click, click, click. In an instant, the huge waves and fluctuations up to 100 meters high were frozen, forming a unique group of huge ice sculptures on the sea surface. Done? Then I'm leaving. Dylan fell from the air and stood on the ice next to Aokiji. Aokiji pushed up his blindfold and seemed to have done something trivial. Is the island in the sky worth such a big fight? Is it the Golden Lion? Dylan glanced at Aokiji and nodded. I have been looking for him for several years. The body is still on the island. If necessary, you can ask someone to clean it up. Killed. Aokiji pressed his palm with some distress. Lion fruit's ability? Forget it, this is what the world government worries about. I'll leave you with the report, Kuzan, I have something to do and go back to East Blue. Hey! You guy? Hey! Looking at the air in front of him and the giant ice sculpture in the distance, Aokiji was silent for a while and then took out his phone. Sengoku-san. Coco West Village, Orange Grove. Isn't Nami here again? Nyoki-jo stood by the stove and cut vegetables while replying, yes, I said I was going for surveying and mapping. Dylan tapped the table lightly and frowned at the drawings hanging all over the living room. Jian, who was sitting aside, hesitated for a moment and then said, Don't worry, she is already 17 years old. Seeing that Dylan's expression still did not improve, Jian asked tentatively, How about I call her to come back? No, just let her do what she likes, Bulo before Dylan could say anything, the phone bug on his arm suddenly rang. After pressing answer, the phone bug's face turned into a guy with a short head and a square face. Dylan Vice Admiral? Please, save the people of Sakura Flower Kingdom. Sakura Flower Kingdom? Dalton? What's wrong? Some very vicious pirates are here. No. Dylan hung up the phone and stood up, saying to the kitchen, I'll be back for dinner. Wait for me for a moment. In the kitchen, Nakajo nodded, Be safe, brother Dylan. After walking out of the gate, Dylan flew towards the Grand Line. Teach, you got the dark fruit. Chapter 44. In the wind and snow on Sigu Island, countless people supported each other and ran towards the castle. So vicious. Those pirates. Someone come and save us. Although there are only a few pirates, each of them is powerful and cruel, even His Majesty the King. That His Majesty the King, who is so kind, was so humiliated by them. In the castle, Dalton, surrounded by everyone, vomited blood and was covered in wounds. Where did they go? Those people didn't seem to have much interest in the treasure, and they wreaked havoc as soon as they arrived. Going in the direction of the witch's castle. Dr. Kulha. Dalton gasped and turned to look at the phone next to him. That man, will he come? Listening to the groans and wailings of the people around him, Dalton felt helpless and desperate. Then he remembered what the man said to him back then, Your evil lies in your hypocrisy and incompetence. Am I really incompetent? Dalton clenched his hands tightly, and the pink sakura flags outside the window looked so dazzling. Outside Dr. Kulha's castle, Blackbeard had just walked out of the castle with satisfaction when he saw the crew members lying on the ground outside. Poison Q, Badgers, Van Oka and Lafitte were all covered in blood, but none of them lost their vital signs. Dylan leaned against the stone pillar outside the castle gate. He watched Blackbeard come out and looked up and down before saying, Done. Ha 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 ha, it's you, Dark Dragon. Inside the door, Dr. Kulha, wearing a short shirt, came out, and Dylan glanced at her. When you are old, just take care of yourself. Don't think that because you are old, you can blackmail anyone if you know some bullshit secret. Dylan stood up and put Shura on the ground. There are many people in this sea who know the secret. Your help in transforming this BDS body will offset the last medical fee. Get out of here. Not only Dr. Kulha, but also Blackbeard on the side also widened his eyes. You. What? Surprised? Teach, Lao Zi doesn't plan to kill you today, but... Dylan pulled out Shura and said, This place is barely considered Lao Zi's chassis. I feel very shameless to let you leave like this. Thunder Spear. Dark Water. The black particles rotated and swallowed up the lightning spear that was fired towards Blackbeard. Ha 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 ha, the ability is ineffective against Lao Zi. I know. Before the lightning was completely swallowed up, a red slash followed closely behind. Laugh. Blackbeard's chest was slashed and blood spurted out. But... Damn it. It hurts, hurts, hurts. Blackbeard covered his wound with one hand and rolled on the ground, as if he might die at any moment. Dylan watched him perform there indifferently, his expression not changing at all. Are you done with the show? Get out of here when you're done with it. If you weren't still useful, you and your stinky fish and shrimps wouldn't be able to leave today. Get out of here. Blackbeard, who was still rolling on the ground, paused and then jumped up. Although the wound on his chest was still bleeding, he didn't realize it. You guy. Blackbeard swallowed, ha 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 ha, I didn't expect that there are people like this in Marine. Since you don't arrest me today, then I will leave, Dark Dragon. Dylan watched the Blackbeard pirates limping away, and the veins in Shura's hand swelled. After they disappeared from sight, Dylan sighed. Summit War is a very important part of his plan and cannot be changed. As for Teach, this BD hasn't even had to sleep since he was a child. In addition to his body structure being different from ordinary people, his willpower and body's ability to withstand pain have long surpassed that of normal humans. This guy, although his acting skills are exaggerated, is really a monster. Dylan pondered for a moment. Fortunately, for now, Blackbeard, like Ace and Kizaru, relies a little too much on fruits. Judging from the previous confrontation, it would not be a big problem for me to kill him, even if he gets the shock fruit. But this guy? Dylan frowned. Teach was able to tie with the red-haired one without eating the fruit. There should be other means. After turning around and glancing at the castle, Dylan walked down the hill, his expression full of sarcasm. When he promised Dr. Kulha, he was giving the people a chance to buy their lives. Since you don't cherish it yourself, you won't be able to blame Laozi when the day comes. In the castle, Dr. Kulha's face was solemn. Looking at Dr. Chopper who was busy in the distance, Kulha sighed inwardly, I'm sorry Chopper. This is the agreement between me and the D family. Sigu Island Palace Castle. Dylan stood in the middle of the hall, watching the crowds of people leaving and then glanced at Dalton, who looked sluggish. How is it? Have you realized your incompetence and stupidity? Dylan sneered, this is a great shipping route, and you actually expect to use ordinary people to protect our country. Dalton lowered his head and remained silent, even though Dylan's eyes and tone were full of disdain, even though he was the king of a country that joined the world government. When facing this man, he had no temper at all. During the last World Summit, countries as powerful as West Blue Flower Country, New World Dressrosa, and Alabasta were all accusing him. So what, this man's status and power have not been affected at all, because the large number of East Blue countries, as well as the Dragon Palace Kingdom of the Fishmen Island, are defending him. If you can't, just ask. Don't you like living in a thatched hut outside? Go now. Dylan looked at Dalton, who looked painful and struggling, with a trace of impatience flashing on his face. Just as Dylan raised his arm to call CP0, Dalton raised his head. Please, give me another chance. Dylan's arm stopped in the air and he looked at Dalton coldly. If he cannot show courage and determination today, then he will take away this country. Although it is a little too late in terms of time, it is still a strength. It's been 5 or 6 years. I thought you would know how to change and fight after experiencing Wapol. I didn't expect you to be so naive and stupid in such a dangerous zone. Dylan put down his arms, turned around and walked out without looking at the remorseful Dalton. You have to think clearly about the path you want to take. I will only tell you one thing, if you seek peace through war, you will live in peace. If you seek peace through peace, you will perish in peace. When he walked to the gate, Dylan looked at Sakura in the square with a look of disgust in his eyes. Laozi doesn't like that flag. If he comes over next time it's the same flag. Dylan didn't say anything else, but the chill in it made Dalton shiver. Marie Joyce, Pangu Palace. Take the initiative to apply for Marine Garrison. The 5 elders were a little surprised after hearing the report. Sakura Flower, not, Chia Kingdom. The CP0 who worked with Dylan stood aside waiting for their decision. But the G5 branch is far away from there. If we garrison. They did not discuss whether to change the garrison of other branches, because the top application they submitted was garrisoned by G5. Let him decide for himself, it's just a small country in the lower realm, but the 5 elders, who had a birthmark on their forehead, turned to look at CP0, has the identity of that woman been confirmed? CP0 bowed slightly and said, we can't be sure yet. His appearance is very different from the reward issued at that time, including his recorded speech and behavioral habits. If it's really her. 5 elders thought for a while and seemed to remember something. Forget it, just let people observe from the outside. Even if it is really her, she is already in her twilight years and there is no need to worry. But The blonde five elders raised his hand and waved away CP0 and then said to the others, "The first light has appeared, why didn't he take action against the light?" "No, he took action, but for some reason, he did not extinguish the light. We don't have to doubt his position, because Lord Im has already asserted it. All lights will be extinguished by him." Chapter 45. See Circle Calendar 1522. The waterway where the G5 branch is located has almost become a restricted area for pirates. Even if they are participating in Joker's auction or trading weapons with him, other countries and pirates will choose to take a longer route. What surprised others was that just when they almost pushed Dressrosa to a dead end, Dylan suddenly ordered a change of direction. Although they were confused, everyone never disobeyed Dylan's orders. This also allowed the endangered Don Quixote pirates to breathe. The sea area northwest of G5 branch. Shiryu, Anne, and Belmere stood on the bow of the ship, looking at the flag in the distance. "It's the pirate group under Whitebeard. This point is the dividing line between us and him. The island in front of them planted the Whitebeard flag more than 10 years ago, while the island behind them planted the G5 flag yesterday. Hey, let's do it," Dylan said last time. "Don't take the initiative to collide with the four emperors for the time being. They won't come, and we don't need to provoke them for the time being." Anne held Kiashui and raised his wrist, then, "Turn. The next stop is Coconut Palm Island. The pirates there are not affiliated with the four emperors." Shiryu glanced at Anne and then at Belmere. "This stupid woman seems to have become extremely violent recently. When facing pirates, she almost always kills them with one punch. Are you venting any emotions?" Then Shiryu shook his head to dispel distracting thoughts. These things were not what he should care about. The G5 branch also welcomed a special guest at this time. "Why do you come to my place if you don't accompany your gorilla on the island?" Dylan crossed his legs and threw a bottle of wine to Hawkeye. "I found an interesting young man in East Blue, and he seems to know you." Dylan looked up and thought about it. What happened? It seems that after that BD Creek entered the Grand Line, he disturbed Hawkeye's sleep, so he chased him all the way to the East Blue like a cat chasing a mouse. But the problem is, Creek has been dead for 10 FG years. Why would the Hawkeyes still go to East Blue? What are you doing in East Blue? Dylan stared at Hawkeye, as if he wanted to ask him for a reasonable answer. Hawkeye shook his wine glass and said casually, "There is no special reason, just wandering around looking for interesting opponents." "Then why don't you go find Rayleigh? He uses a sword, right?" The wine glass in his hand swayed, and after a moment of silence, Hawkeye said, "I made an agreement with the world government not to touch those taboo people." In order to cooperate with Hawkeye, Dylan had to ask again, "Then what are the interesting young people you are talking about?" "It's a young man named Narinozoro." After narrating what he saw in East Blue, Hawkeye said he saw you in East Blue when he was a child, and it had a great influence on him. Green Algae Head, I did meet him once. What? Do you think highly of him? He has a strong heart and belief, and he should be able to become a great swordsman in the future. Yet, Dylan was non-committal about Hawkeye. Green Algae Head's swordsmanship is very monotonous. From the middle to late stage, he basically uses teleportation and IAI, but his fame is just fancy. Named fruit after all. After Hawkeye left, Dylan picked up the phone and dialed. On the other side was a guy with short white hair and a ruffian face. "What's wrong? Are you still at East Blue?" "No, I applied for a transfer order from the headquarters to hunt down a guy in the park." Dylan hung up the phone and pondered for a moment. "Straw Hat, have you arrived in Robistan?" Although he had warned Crocodile, Dylan knew that the arrogant guy didn't really take it to heart, he only thought he was humiliating him. To this day, Dylan still hasn't figured out that Bullet in his youth could draw with Rayleigh in his prime, and Crocodile could draw with Bullet. He even challenged Whitebeard later on. Although this challenge may contain moisture, people like Moria have also challenged Kaido. But, the gap is definitely not that big. Even if it is careless or arrogant. Could it be that the same thing as Golden Lion happened to Crocodile? This guy, his fearless character is even more distinctive than Flamingo da Flamingo. At least da Flamingo was relatively honest when facing Aokiji, Akainu, and Sengoku, but Crocodile actually dared to attack Akainu when he was on top. This can no longer be described as not afraid of death. It should be something to rely on. Judging from Whitebeard's tolerant attitude towards him, he should have some kind of relationship with Whitebeard. It's hard to say whether he was transformed from a woman to a man by the ladyboy king on hormones, but Dylan doesn't really agree with this in his heart. Statement. Mans Harry. Mans Hilly, who was in the garden outside the window, immediately flew up when he heard Dylan's voice. Dylan Lando, is there anything you need me to do? Dylan stretched out his hand. My sister may be sick, although. Anyway, I'm not too worried. You go to the ring and stay for a while. I'll go over and take a look. I'll bother you then. Dylan Lando's sister? Dylan smiled, it's Belmir's daughter. By the way, she might have been bitten by an insect, and then developed symptoms of high fever. Then let's go, Dylan Lando. At the foot of Sigudeo Mountain, Sanji and Straw Hat looked at the thousands-meter-high mountain peak and then at Nami, who had a high fever. They gritted their teeth and said, we have to climb up with Nami on our backs. Good. Straw Hat had just rolled up his sleeves when a voice came from a distance, no need. Dylan fell into the snow and looked at the red-faced Nami, and then at the confused Straw Hat and the scared Sanji next to him. Put her down. No. Nami is our companion. Roll. Dylan shouted and turned to stare at Straw Hat, do you want to die? Brother Dylan, don't hurt him. Nami, who had fallen into a coma, was woken up. The moment she saw Dylan, she was first surprised, and then turned into guilt. When she felt Dylan's murderous intention towards Luffy, she quickly summoned up the strength to speak. The Straw Hat on the side was still scratching his head. Brother. Is this guy your eldest brother? Sanji pulled Luffy to the side and whispered, hey, you really don't know who Nami is, do you? Ha! Seeing Luffy's appearance, Sanji swallowed. She is the adopted sister of Marine Vice Admiral Dark Dragon. Didn't you always know? Dark Dragon. What is that? Sanji glanced at Dylan, that's Marine's code name. Luffy, this generation of Marine, if you match the color with an animal, is basically a monster, and is even qualified to become a Marine Admiral. That's right, but he is Nami's brother, he should be a good person, right? Sanji suddenly choked. A good person? Maybe so. For civilians. But to pirates, this guy is an out-and-out devil. On the other side, Nami recovered instantly under the treatment of Mans Helly. After treating Nami, Mans Helly looked at Dylan. I don't know whether it was because he sensed Dylan's bad mood, or because he couldn't bear the cold climate here. Mans Helly took the initiative to return to the ring space. Dylan sighed and took out a fur coat from the ring and put it on Nami. Take care of yourself, Nami. After saying that, Dylan turned into a shadow and disappeared. Nami was wrapped in a coat with tears in her eyes. Brother Dylan. She doesn't stay on Coco West Island all day like Nukajeo. Since she was a teenager, she has been wandering around the East Blue, surveying and mapping. Of course she knew who Brother Dylan was and what his stance and will were. But Luffy. Nami looked back at the man who brought her happiness and dreams. Finally Nami squatted on the ground and cried loudly. How ironic that the adopted sister of the patron saint of East Blue actually became a pirate. Sanji and Straw Hat sat quietly next to her, comforting her silently. After Nami calmed down, Straw Hat grinned, Hey, Sanji, Nami, shall we go up? Ah! Sanji was stunned for a moment. Nami's illness has been cured, why are you still going up there? Straw Hat touched his chin, I always feel like there's something interesting up there, like someone is calling me. Chapter 46. Half a month later. The report of the original 7 warlords of the sea, Crocodile's conspiracy to steal the country was stopped by Marine spread around the world. Dylan looked at the angry-looking Smoker and the embarrassed Tashigi in the newspaper. These two guys got a lot of credit for nothing, and each of them got a level up, but Smoker's mentality also changed dramatically from here. Although he used to be a mad dog in Marine, he basically followed the general direction and carried out orders. Since the Alabasta incident, his trust in Marine and world government has been further reduced. Nico Robin, have you unlocked the historical text about Pluton? Kuzan should also know about such dangerous things, and her survival must be inseparable from Kuzan. In Dylan's opinion, there are almost no generals in Marine who are absolutely righteous, in terms of compassion. Perhaps Shipbreaker T-Pen counts as one. As for everyone else, everyone has their own positions and ideas. Needless to say, Sengoku ordered the capture and execution of all pregnant women and babies on Bade Lila Island in order to carry out his order to cut off Roger's bloodline. During the Summit War, they did not hesitate to order indiscriminate attacks and sacrifice peripheral marines in exchange for tactical execution. In order to ensure Ace's safety, Garp did not stop this behavior. As for Aokiji and Fujitora, one lets Robin wander among gangsters and pirates, while the other sits back and watches the death of Dressrosa, a poor man, in order to prove his justice. Don't tell anyone. As for Dylan himself? Dylan stood up and looked at Shura next to him. He never wanted to be a saint, and he could never become a saint. He also kills people because of his likes and dislikes. For example, 2 years later, if he meets Momonosuke who traveled across time from 20 years ago. Even if you are really Uranus, Lao Zi will still kill you. Marineford Conference Room. The only people in the entire conference room hall were Crane Vice Admiral, Xiong, and 2 other school officials. Hey, what are you doing? I'm sorry. Be careful. My body is out of control. One of the school officers suddenly drew his weapon and slashed at the other one. Crane Vice Admiral put his chin in his hands and took a look and said, "Are you the one who is causing trouble? Doflamingo? Let them go, be good. Be good? Bark, 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 if you want to say that." As soon as Doflamingo's gesture changed, Marine, who was holding the weapon, was about to stab his companion. "If you don't behave well, you have to be careful when that guy comes over. He's not as easy to talk to as us." Doflamingo gestured and his expression darkened. In the corridor on one side of the conference hall, 2 figures, one tall and one short, came. Dylan walked beside Sengoku and glanced at Doflamingo, who was frozen in place. "What? Do you want Lao Zi to beg you? Come down and sit down." Doflamingo was silent for a moment and then laughed dryly. "Beep, bark, bark, bark. You still have such a bad temper, Dylan. You have taken good care of my business." Dylan walked over to Vice Admiral He and sat down next to him, looking at Doflamingo who was already sitting in his seat. "If you keep talking, Lao Zi will take 30% of the tax on Dressrosa's business from now on." The Crane next to him, Vice Admiral, pursed his lips and smiled, while Sengoku, who was sitting in the chair, seemed not to hear it. "No one else will come, this time. Ta-ta. Ta-ta." Hawkeye walked into the hall carrying Knight on his back. Sengoku said with some confusion, "I didn't expect you to come." Hawkeye glanced at Dylan and said, "I'm just passing by, and this time I'm just listening." Just as Sengoku was about to speak, a soft voice suddenly came from the window of the conference hall, "Then can you also participate in this audit?" After the meeting, only Vice Admiral, Sengoku, and Dylan were left in the hall. Crane Vice Admiral looked at Dylan and said, "That kid just now seemed to be very afraid of you? Have you seen him before?" Dylan replied while lighting his cigarette, "Well, I met them once in the Paradise and beat them up." "The people on Whitebeard's ship? They are really hot guys, but they are just used to fill the position of crocodile after it is abolished. Is there anything wrong?" Sengoku looked at Dylan who was casually watching. This was a little different from his usual style. Dylan flicked the ashes of his cigarette and said, "No. I've seen those bastards before. Although they are real villains, they still have the strength to serve as Shishibukai. That's it." Looking at Dylan walking out of the conference hall, Sengoku lowered his head and said to Vice Admiral He, "Xiao He, do you think Dylan is a little unusual this time?" "It is indeed true, but we don't know the reason yet." "Because of D. Marshall. D. Teach." Just when Dylan came to the square and was about to leave, several familiar figures attracted his attention. Old Man Garp was sitting on the bench chewing donuts, while 2 young men were training on the court. "This is the disciple you chose." Dylan glanced at the slightly fat pink-haired boy with a look of disgust on his face. "Ah!" Garp keenly sensed Dylan's malice and suddenly felt a little strange. Although this guy is very cruel to pirates, he is very kind to marines and civilians. "I heard that your grandson did great things in Alabasta, Old Man Garp." Dylan sat on the other side of the bench, squinting at the king of deserters in the school field. Garp closed the donut bag in his hand and turned to look at Dylan. "Luffy, is the path he chose, and as long as he didn't do evil." "Yes, that's right. As long as he has not done anything evil, I will not take action against him." "But..." Dylan turned to look at Garp, who looked a little shaken. "You have to keep an eye on him, Garp. If he is just taking risks, or like Alabasta, I won't care." Even if he kills people and sets fire, to a certain extent, I don't care. Tolerable. But if he becomes the flag bearer of the pirates, then it won't be up to you, and it won't be up to me either. Dylan stood up and left, and Garp vaguely seemed to hear him say, as a marine, you are successful, but as a father, grandfather, and teacher, you have failed. Bulo 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 Lord Thunder God. Hey? Gump 4. The currents this year were surprisingly strong, and a group of people took advantage of the currents to come to Sky Island. Dylan paused in the air and looked at Gan 4, who looked normal. Is he a guy wearing a straw hat? Hey? Yes. That's true, but they didn't rob here, they just played around and had adventures. Gan.fall. Dylan's eyes narrowed slightly. I don't need you to make judgments about other people. All you have to do is report the situation objectively. Are you trying to influence my judgment? On the other end of the phone call, Ganfuer was trembling all over. No. I didn't mean that. Is the stone still in the Thunder Temple? Yes, Lord Thor, no one has ever come close. A smile appeared on Dylan's lips. Okay, don't worry about them for now, but if they try to get close to or break into the Thunder Temple, you can contact me again. The historical text recording the information of Poseidon was moved to the Thunder Temple by Dylan a few years ago. In the past few years, he has been busy with training and G5 matters, and has basically never gone back, and the stone is not read either. Signpost text. He didn't take it too seriously. After all, he already knew what Poseidon was. So far, Dylan has basically confirmed that many things cannot be changed. As early as nearly 10 years ago, Dylan asked Ganfor to cut off the ladder over the Qinghai Sea, but the Straw Hat crew still reached Sky Island with the unprecedented huge current. He changed Nami's fate, but Nami was still attracted to Straw Hat. He has already changed the fate of the Drum Kingdom, and Straw Hat has still obtained the power of the common people. All this shows that many things are difficult to change. Be it fate or the will of the world. As long as you have enough power in your hands and are strong enough, unless the world can come down and will your will. Otherwise. What the FK God of the Sun and Moon, if I cut off your head you can still do sit UPS. Chapter 47. Join G5? Wouldn't it be better to follow Sengoku? You can't tell which one is bigger and which one is smaller between the Marshal and the Vice Admiral, right? Dylan looked at Luo who had come from afar and felt a little strange. When he changed Luo's fate, it was partly to exchange fruits, and partly to interfere with and weaken Straw Hat's power. According to previous inferences, Luo is very likely to give up his own life to perform the immortality surgery for the Sun God during the final battle, allowing the Sun God to complete the last wave of Sit UPS. To a certain extent, the person in front of me is one of the real wings of the king. There are not many ants who were toyed and crushed by Ming Ji half a month ago, but can defeat Kid together with Kid half a month later. It's not for promotion or anything like that. I heard from Mr. Sengoku. It was you who changed my destiny. Wearing a beret and carrying Ghost Cry, Luo looked at Dylan. I wanted to come here a long time ago, but Mr. Sengoku said I was too weak, so I delayed it until today. What are you here for? Looking for trouble with Doflamingo? Since you are at the headquarters, you should know that I have stopped suppressing Dressrosa for the time being. In order to avoid forcing Doflamingo to jump over the wall and affect the Summit War, Dylan relaxed the blockade on Dressrosa more than half a year ago. Unexpectedly, Luo shook his head. This matter is very important, but it is not my main purpose. Hey! Dylan then raised his head and looked at Luo. When he was young, he hated the world because of the disease. Although he was later influenced by Rosinante, he eventually embarked on the path of pirates. After sending him to Marine, Dylan didn't pay much attention to him. He didn't expect that after so many years, he would actually come to his door. Then what is your purpose? Is it still the same as when you were a child? To destroy the world? Luo looked at Dylan in surprise, but then he was relieved. Of course not, Doflamingo is just a small part of the suffering in this world, and he wants to change the fate of other children. Luo hesitated for a moment and then looked at Dylan. My judgment is the same as Mr. Sengoku's. You have potential and are not restricted. And Mr. Sengoku said that you also have very special abilities and powers. If I follow you, I should have a better chance of seeing that day. Sengoku? Dylan frowned. Did this old fritter become a sperm after eating the Buddha fruit? Luo saw Dylan thinking and didn't interrupt him. He stood opposite and waited quietly for Dylan's answer. Yes, but there is a price. Dylan twisted his neck. Rosinante told you, what kind of enemies of God are the so-called D clan? Yes. Dylan curled his lips. Here to me, there is no destiny or will, my destiny, or our destiny. It is all earned by ourselves, not given by anyone, nor given by anyone. If you accept it, just drop the name D. The City of Water. After Garp told everyone about Straw Hat's life experience, everyone looked at Straw Hat in shock. Anyway, just as Garp was about to continue speaking, his brows suddenly tightened and his face darkened. Dark Dragon Vice Admiral. The guard at the door saluted loudly. Dylan walked into the ballroom wearing a cape. Hey, don't look at me like that. What else can I do with you here? Brother Dylan. Nami cheered and walked up to Dylan and held his clothes affectionately. You've grown so big, Nami. Although he goes back to Cocoa West Village in East Blue several times every year, Dylan only discovered Nami when he really took a serious look at it. Nearly 10 years have passed since we first met. How about it, is the adventure fun? Looking at Nami, who was filled with joy, Dylan had mixed emotions. The sun god is really extraordinary. Except for those who already knew, everyone else's eyes widened. What are the origins of these boys? Marine's strongest vice admiral, the grandson of Hero Garp. Commander-in-Chief of the Revolutionary Army. Long's son. Marine's youngest vice admiral, the sister of Dark Dragon Dylan. This had to make other people's eyes sweep around Zoro Sanji and the others. These guys don't have any background. Dylan seemed to see through their thoughts and laughed but didn't criticize them. A disciple of the witch who has a mysterious origin and holds the secret of the double fruit. The prince of the kingdom of Germa. Suspected to be the son of the Wano Kuni daimyo, the young master of the Shimotsuki family. The adopted son of the world's best shipbuilder and the adopted brother of the head of the world's largest shipbuilding center. The descendant of O'Hara, the only one in the world who can interpret the text of history. Marine is currently the exclusive little girl of Admiral Aokiji. Besides, the son of the original number 3 of the Red Hair Pirates. Adding up the backgrounds of these people, 4 emperors also has to weigh it up. What AFG dangerous and exciting adventure. Grass. Dylan walked over to Straw Hat and sat down. Although he has been developing in East Blue for more than 10 years, he has never been to Windmill Village for safety reasons. The last time we were on Sigu Island, we met in a hurry and then left. When Dylan sat in front of Straw Hat, Garp's whole body tensed up. Dylan looked at the idiot-looking sun god. Hey kid, why do you want to be a pirate? Straw Hat grinned, because I want to go on adventures everywhere. With my friends. Then you can be an adventurer or a traveler. Straw Hat was stunned for a moment and then retorted loudly, no. Pirates are the freest in the world. Dylan stared at him and asked with some confusion, aren't you free? Your grandfather is one of the strongest men in the world, and your father is also known as the most vicious criminal in the world. Under this premise, you not free enough. Without waiting for Straw Hat to answer, Dylan continued, do you have to become a pirate to be free? Do you have to bear the name of a pirate? Could it be that what you want is not unrestrained freedom, but lawless freedom? Straw Hat was stunned for a moment. In his mind, gathering friends, traveling, taking risks, and finding one piece was his purpose. Dylan watched quietly as Straw Hat fell into silence without interrupting him immediately. Others beside him also fell into silence. You've met a lot of people along the way, right? Buggy the Clown, Crocodile, these guys are all pirates. Although your journey is still short, for now, you think pirates bring laughter to the world. And happy. Uncontrollable conflicts of belief collided in Straw Hat's mind. For a moment, he even began to doubt whether his choice was correct. Your grandfather has spent his whole life guarding the sea. Now, at the age of 76, he still scares the big pirates with his supreme prestige and has gained respect and love from all over the world. Although your father is a fool, his starting point is also good. He is to overthrow the powerful and enable civilians to live a better life. They are all working hard for their own ideals and beliefs. What about you? Dylan stood up and looked down at Straw Hat. You actually want to become a pirate? When hearing these words, Straw Hat and Nami's bodies trembled at the same time. But Dylan didn't give them time to refute, the so-called pirate king in the world, Gol D. Roger. Did he win back his throne by guessing? Your guide, your old friend Red Hair, Shanks, as one of the 4 emperors of the New World today, he sits on nearly 1/6 of the New World sea area. Could it be that these sea areas are all earned by relying on his face? Dylan looked directly into Straw Hat's eyes, his sharp eyes almost weighing him down. This process is full of killing and destruction, countless families have been destroyed, and countless countries have been enslaved. Is this the path you have chosen? Monkey D. Luffy. Not like this. Under Dylan's powerful momentum, Straw Hat raised his head and shouted, I'm not such a pirate. I'm just here for adventure. I won't hurt anyone. That's just your wishful thinking. What you want, others may not want to give. What you give, others may not want. Don't use your freedom to judge others, and don't put your freedom above other people's lives. Dylan narrowed his eyes and glanced around. I respect your grandfather and admire everything he has done for this world. But, when the time comes, he has no qualifications or reasons to stop me. With Dylan's departure, the originally joyful banquet also fell into silence. Straw Hat clenched his fists tightly and looked at his companions and then at Garp, who had grey hair. Grandfather. Garp smiled helplessly, but didn't say anything. Straw Hat felt sad, but then he raised his arms to the sky and shouted, I am not that kind of pirate. Chapter 48. East Blue. In the mountains inside the nameless island. The interior of the mountain, which looked normal from the outside, had long been hollowed out, and a huge circular conference hall was built in the belly of this seemingly inconspicuous mountain. Dozens of people were sitting around a huge round table. In the center of the round table was a huge map with the 4 seas, calm belt, grand line marked in detail. And every nation and race. What is more conspicuous is that most of the areas and islands in East Blue are decorated with small red flags. Despite the large number of people in the conference hall, not a single sound was made. There is no one sitting on the master's seat facing the door, and everyone else seems to be waiting for the master of that position. Awaited. A voice sounded from behind the main seat. In the shadow of the passage behind the main seat, a tall and straight body slowly appeared in everyone's sight. Others nodded, but still no one made a sound. After the visitor sat down, everyone stared at his body. Is this man finally going to start? Although many people were excited inside, they still remained calm and restrained for disciplinary reasons. It's not time yet. The visitor raised his head and looked around. We came to a conclusion more than 10 years ago. I believe everyone has not forgotten it. The long-bearded old man sitting first on the left side of the main seat nodded. Yes, the complexity of the world situation today cannot be divided simply by marine, pirates, revolutionary army. The real power on the red line, the family power of the 20 kings, the inheritance of the great kingdom, the origin of the revolutionary army, and the remaining pirates who hold the handle of the world government. These are our enemies in the future, and even marine must think in a more prudent and pessimistic direction. However, after more than 10 years of hard work, the old man flicked his sleeves, and the area with the red flag on the table lit up instantly. We have spread faith and hope to most areas of the East Blue. In the name of the Revolutionary Army, we have overthrown many tyrannies, and in the name of blood we have elected our companions to become kings and generals. Except for a few areas related to Marie Joyce and designated by MR, more than half of the entire East Blue is already under our control. The long-bearded old man also looked around, and everyone else nodded. According to what Sir means, we have completed the initial spread of ideas and the seizure of political power. Next. The long-bearded old man put his hands flat on the table and stared at the person sitting on the table with the others. The man who rose like a comet, current Marine Vice Admiral, Dark Dragon, Adams Dylan. He is also their leader, the initiator of the Peace Round Table. Dylan raised his head and looked into pairs of eyes full of fighting spirit. In addition to their fighting spirit, the will revealed in them is also enough to move people. Time is very tight. The first sentence made everyone present hold their breath. In the past 10 years, through various wars, whether against pirates or against noble armies, our soldiers and armies have very obvious characteristics. Progress, there is no doubt about it. But my identity is very sensitive now, so in the next few years, I will try to avoid going back to East Blue to meet you. Dylan knocked on the table, and you have 2 tasks. Dylan raised his finger. First, cultivate more companions who share our ideals from the existing army. Second, let the companions who have completed the tempering of faith gain stronger power. Bamond also said it just now, and you know it very well. Dylan stood up, leaned forward, and looked directly at the red line location on the map. Our enemy is definitely not just one party. If you want to truly change the world, you need to be prepared to be the enemy of the whole world. After everyone left one after another, only Dylan, who was sitting in charge, was left in the conference hall, Beaumont on the left, and a strong man with his eyes slightly closed on the right. After a while, footsteps echoed in the passage again, and a man who was originally sitting at the door returned to the conference hall. After nodding towards Dylan and the people sitting on the left and right, the man who looked harmless and always smiled said, "Everything is as Sir expected. The old ideas are deeply ingrained, and many people he was originally a civilian, a refugee, or even a slave, but he will gradually change after gaining power. They were beguiled by power and wealth and forgot the vows they had made." The man raised his head with a smile. "According to the guidance of Sir, no one is allowed to defect as long as we are not exposed, so, in the past 3 years, the Discipline Department has purged 5 more people. There are a total of 339 people including the king, 12 generals, 21 consuls, middle and lower level officers, and government officials." There wasn't much change in the expression on Dylan's face. Bauman sighed, and the strong man on the left snorted coldly. "We must increase the intensity of supervision from now on, and there must be no mistakes. Otherwise, our plan of more than 10 years will be in vain. In half a month." Dylan stared at Marineford's position. He has received the information that Ace was defeated by Teach on Bonaro Island, so the summit war is about to begin. The world will become more violent. Seize the opportunity and gather strength. After a period of time, the attention of the world government will be distracted. But don't relax your vigilance. As the same saying goes, our enemies are far away. It's not just world government. Sebastian returned to his kingdom. "Mr. Sebastian, here are some documents that you need to sign." "Mr. Sebastian, the wild beasts are overrun in the Polka Mountains, and we need you to make up your mind." "Mr. Sebastian." Sebastian looked at the noisy crowd in front of the desk with a smile, and patiently replied one after another. When the crowd finally dispersed, he walked out the window and stared at the street beyond the office building. The streets are resplendent and full of luxury. Everyone's face was filled with smiles and joy. The kingdom of Pardo is rich in a rare mineral. But after hundreds of years of mining, the ore reserves have almost bottomed out. Today, the country's nobles are still desperately recruiting people to mine. "What? There is none left? Impossible, dig underneath. This is the wealth God has given us, and it cannot be cut off. Not enough miners? Then send the criminals down. Not enough criminals anymore? Where are the savages outside the city? Catch them all. No one knows how many corpses of civilians were discarded in those dark mines. No one knows where the ore went or what it became." Sebastian was handsome and cold-blooded when he was young. His father was the country's financial officer and was in charge of the entire country's economy. He had never been to the mining areas because everyone knew that savages lived there. They are rude, unclean, barbaric, and mean. Even just a glance is an insult to the nobility. "Hit! Damn beast, it fled to the mining area, young master, how about?" Sebastian turned his head and looked at the attendant coldly. "Are you going to let my record be broken?" "No. Not, but the mining area. It's just a savage. What does it have to do with it?" When Sebastian woke up, his head had been wrapped in a cloth. He vaguely remembered that he chased the beast into the dense forest, but he lost his footing and fell off the cliff. "Brother, are you awake?" Sebastian was about to answer when a sharp pain came from his forehead. "Be careful, big brother, you are a little injured." "A little, hurt?" Although he had never been injured since he was a child, Sebastian was certain that the injury on his head could never be a little injury. "I'm really lucky that I got so injured after falling from such a height." The confused Sebastian shook his head, and at this time several anxious calls sounded in the distance. "Anne, Anne! I'm here." The little girl named Annie stood up and answered the distant call. At that moment, Sebastian finally understood why the little girl named Annie said that he was only slightly injured. The cuff of her left arm was empty, and the entire arm disappeared. "Anne! Annie!" The originally anxious tone turned into panic, and a middle-aged couple ran to the two of them with panic on their faces. When Sebastian saw them, he was even more shocked. Of this couple, one has no left arm and the other has both arms missing. "People here, what the hell is going on?" "Noble! Noble lord! I'm sorry." Anne! Seeing the wound on Sebastian's head, Anne's parents almost fainted with fear. Ah, no, I fell from the mountain by myself, it was Annie who saved me. The armless man trembled and said, that. Don't worry, I won't implicate you. After taking a look at their bodies, Sebastian finally couldn't help but ask, your bodies? After following Anne and her family of 3 back to the savage village, Sebastian's faith completely collapsed. Why do everyone have injuries? No. Almost everyone is disabled. Broken arms, lameness, blindness, sunken chest. They all become like this while working in the mines. Anne's father sighed, the mine is very dangerous, there is almost no lighting, and it often collapses. My arm was missing during a collapse, to protect Anne's mother. Sebastian swallowed, looked at Anne who was only 7 or 8 years old, and asked with some trembling, then Anne's hand. Anne's mother looked sad. After Joseph lost his hands, we had no other source of livelihood, and Anne could only follow me to help in the mine. A thunder exploded in Sebastian's heart. Is this country so sad? Taking advantage of the darkness, Sebastian came to the mine. The dark mine looked like a giant beast with its mouth open. After swallowing, young Sebastian walked tremblingly. When he escaped from the mine and returned to the royal capital, the nobles looked at him with strange eyes. Savage? How did you come to the royal capital? Look carefully, this guy is the fiscal officer's son, Sebastian. I heard that I went to the mine. What? It's so degrading. What are you doing in such a dirty place? That's right, as nobles, we just need to wait for the untouchables to bring the ore up. At that moment, Sebastian deeply hated his status as a noble. The mud covering their bodies and their panicked expressions looked out of place with the nobles standing on both sides of the road in suits and leather shoes, holding parasols and incense sticks. It only took 3 months for Sebastian, who was originally handsome and cold-blooded, to go from the most handsome man in the kingdom of Pardo to a fat, nice gentleman who is always smiling. Until one day, when he was planning to blow up the largest mine in Pardo, his attendant suddenly said to him, if this world could be saved by destruction, it would cease to exist long ago. If you want to change it, come with me and go somewhere else. The confused Sebastian followed the attendant and left for a while. When he returned to Pardo, he was still as fat as ever, but still smiling. But there was something different in his eyes. It was a flame. It's burning. Chapter 49. The Sea Deep in the New World. Whitebeard frowned, and the others also looked solemn. Still no news. Whitebeard was holding a huge wine bottle, but he had no interest in drinking. On the deck, Marco shook his head, the phone bug can't be contacted, and the life card is slowly burning. Whitebeard tightened his grip and the wine bottle shattered. Teach. What are you? G5 branch. All members are summoned here. Dylan's eyes swept over them one by one. Belmir, Tom, Shiryu, Tahir, Anne, Manshiri, Leo, Vika, Bien, Kabu, and the newly joined Luo. And young Au. I will stop hunting from today on, and I will also stop hunting at the alloy workshop. Dylan thought for a moment and then said to the crowd in front of him, Shiryu, Anne, Tahir. Exist. You guys go out with me, the others stay behind at G5. Learn. Everyone answered in unison, even Mangzalai and Au answered loudly. As for the rogue marines, Dylan had already split them into different teams, led by core members. When he was about to leave, Dylan suddenly stopped and said, Belmir will send Au to the Water City first and leave it to Acebagu to take care of. Then rush back to G5 with all his strength to join Tom and others. Tom. If there are pirates from New World or the Whitebeard pirates passing by recently, ignore them. Everyone had shocked looks on their faces. This is not his style. But they had long grown accustomed to Dylan's orders, especially Tom and Shiryu. Clear. Keep the phone bug open and ready for orders. Apart from Luo, only Mangzalai and Au looked a little confused. Most people's faces were very calm, but Shiryu looked eager to try. From now on, you will be with me the whole time. I want all the information first-hand. Dylan looked at CP0 after getting on the boat. CP0 responded with silence. He didn't even dare to say a word in front of the coming storm. Now, head to the Sabayati archipelago, you lead the way, avoiding all the celestial dragons. Clear. Dylan's face was ferocious. Wings of the King? The fate of one of them has been changed by me. The other one, let's take advantage of this to end it. Shiryu stood behind Dylan and couldn't help but feel a little strange when he felt the killing intent in Dylan. Ever since he followed Dylan, he has rarely seen Dylan reveal such a strong murderous intention in the past few years. Talk about it. Shiryu shook his head and smiled. In recent years, he has stopped challenging Dylan. On the one hand, he can go to the New World and fight as much as he wants under Dylan's label. And he has clearly noticed that the distance between him and himself is getting farther and farther. On the Sabayati archipelago at this time, people are discussing the so-called Supernova 11. A guy named Beast Controller Kanamori succeeded in taking over, replacing the original Death Surgeon, Trafalgar Law. The moment Dylan and his party boarded the Sabayati archipelago, a siren sounded. The special alarm frequency shocked CP0 who was following Dylan. Celestial dragons are under attack? At the same time, an alarm of the same frequency sounded over Marineford. Garb. Look at what your grandson has done. Ptahaha. You are indeed my grandson. Angrily, Sengoku stared at Garp and was about to speak when he suddenly remembered something and his expression changed. Hey Garp. Garp, who was originally carefree, was a little surprised when he saw Sengoku's expression. Dylan, went to the Sabayati archipelago. Garp's scalp tightened and he jumped up on the spot. Idiot, what do you want to do? Sengoku glared at Garp, will that guy really let your grandson be slaughtered? Are you ready to completely give up your justice now? Garp's eyelids twitched wildly, and he clenched the guard's donut wrapper into a ball. Luffy. The celestial dragons are under attack, should we? This is Admiral's business. Now, have your people find Eustace Kid and Skulachman APU for me. Learn. At the port on Street 9, as soon as the G5 ship appeared, in addition to merchant ships and warships, other pirate ships ran away. Dylan had no intention of paying attention to these miscellaneous fish, and took the first step towards number 1 street. Hey guys, is it fun to watch? As Dylan landed, intelligence channels throughout the Sabayati archipelago began to operate frantically. The Dark Dragon guy is here. Is it a gesture to the Celestial Dragons? Maybe, he went directly to Street 1. In addition to the hidden line, tell those with bounty money to evacuate immediately. Avenue 1. Dylan's appearance caused a commotion. Some guys who were not afraid of death even licked their lips to show a dangerous look. If you kill this guy, you will become famous all over the world immediately. Shiryu, An, all pirates with bounties on their heads, execute on the spot. Yes. 2 black figures flashed out from behind Dylan, and in an instant, more than a dozen heads flew up. After Dylan's training under Ryoma's guidance, An's swordsmanship has long been separated from those fancy moves. Swordsmanship is for killing people. An, with an indifferent expression, moved through the crowd as quickly as a ghost. Scythe, Solari. Black Bear, Gris. Red Witch Guy Terran. Well-known players fell one after another, and many were cut in half before they even reacted. Dylan's footsteps did not stop, and the shouts and curses around him did not arouse his pity at all. Boom! There was a gunshot. On the second-floor window of a private house, a one-eyed pirate was holding a gun. Killed. Dark Dragon. Dylan's footsteps didn't pause at all, but Tahir's body beside him moved slightly. Bang! Tahir held the bullet between his 2 fingers and smiled at the people upstairs, although as Logia, he won't be hit by you idiots, but... A ball of purple flames rose from the body of the one-eyed pirate on the second floor, burning him to ashes in just an instant. But the floor where the pirate was showed no signs of being burned at all. He is not someone you can harass. CP0 next to me became more and more frightened as he walked forward. In just a few hundred meters, more than 200 pirates were killed. Among them are some veteran players with bounties worth over 100 million. 10 million level players can hardly sustain even one round in the hands of Shiryu and An. And those below 10 million. Not even qualified to escape. The corpses of pirates lay scattered on the street, and opportunists continued to want to sneak attack or shoot Dylan. But they were all resolved lightly by Tahir. Seeming Skulachman APU appears on 27th Street. Lead the way. Seeing Dylan turn around, Shiryu licked his lips and withdrew Liu, and returned behind Dylan in a flash. Ah bah bah, what a big event. Mr. APU, there is a message from Street 1, the Dark Dragon is coming this way. Dark Dragon, does such a young marine really have that kind of strength? Not far away, Hawkins was playing with tarot cards and frowning tightly. The day of death has come. It cannot be changed. Ah, bah, what are you talking about? Hawkins. You need to know. Before APU finished speaking, he instinctively felt suffocated. It was as if a dark shadow completely enveloped him. Cold sweat flowed from his forehead. At this moment, the biological instinct told him, don't run away, don't move, don't talk. At this time, Dylan was already 3 meters tall. He looked down at the motionless APU with an irritated look on his face. APU swallowed hard and turned his head with difficulty. Hawkins on the side stared at the tarot cards in front of him. The survival rate is 0. Boom. APU jumped from the spot and jumped to the roof in an instant. No funny laughs, no attacks on Dylan, or even attention to the remaining crew members. Tahir. Yes. Tahir looked at APU who was jumping on the roof. Although he still wore the demon fox mask on his face, the smile at the corner of his mouth still made people think. Falling flames. A group of dark purple flames instantly enveloped APU, and APU's pupils shrank as he struggled to escape. What? In midair, a cloud of ashes fell with the wind. One of the Supernova 11, Seeming, Skulachman APU disappeared from the world. Shiryu, clean up. As soon as Dylan finished speaking, an explosion sounded next to him. Tahir raised his hand, and a barrier appeared in front of everyone, blocking the debris and shrapnel flying everywhere. Oh, it's really scary, G5 branch. Kizaru looked at Dylan with his trouser pockets in. Dylan, have you seen Jean Momomaru? The phone can't get through. No. Dylan glanced at Kizaru and raised his chin towards CP0. The latest news is that Eustace Kid appeared on 21st Street and seemed ready to escape. After glancing at Kizaru, Dylan turned and left. Let's go, Shiryu, since Admiral is here, we don't have to worry about it anymore. Looking at Dylan and his group leaving, Kizaru touched his chin. Can you order CP0 so casually? It's really amazing. Dark Dragon Dylan. Chapter 50. 21st Street. Pacifists block Eustace Kid's path. Captain Eustace Kid. Bounty, 315 million Baileys. Arrest. Are you kidding? Magnetic vice. The huge iron arm attached to Kid's hand grabbed the pacifist. Beep! The pacifist gathered a laser cannon in his mouth and shot it towards the iron arm. Boom! The iron arm collided with the laser. Although it blocked the laser cannon, the parts were shattered on the ground. TCH. It's really difficult to deal with. Hey! Kid! Just as Kid was adsorbing the metal again, Kira's voice next to him changed, with a hint of uneasiness. The guy in trouble is here. Kid jumped a step further away and looked in the direction of Kira's eyes. 5 figures approached slowly from a distance. The lackeys of the Celestial Dragons, and the Dark Dragon. Dylan put his right hand on the handle of the knife and looked at the nuts, wheels and pots and pans on Kid's arm with a look of disgust on his face. The good magnetic fruit just turned you into a rag collector. That's it. The first person to go supernova? King's wings? A steel ball was sucked from the ground to Dylan's hand. The power of thunder emerged in Dylan's hand, and the dense thunder light frantically rubbed the air, making bursts of sharp and harsh sounds. Pressing his thumb and index finger against the steel ball, Dylan looked at Kid who was sweating in the distance. Try my electromagnetic gun. With a push of his thumb, the steel ball wrapped in thunder flew out, and even the air was distorted for a moment. Kid's eyelids twitched. At this level, it was impossible for the metal arm to stop him. He could only try his abilities. Magnetic barrier. Ah! Dylan chuckled, although electricity and magnetism are one family. But the power gap between him and Kid, as well as the level of fruit development and understanding, can no longer be described as a gap. Hey! Boom! The electromagnetic gun flashing with dazzling white light grew larger and larger in the air, directly passed through and submerged Kid's body, and then cut off the number 21 tree behind him. Did you avoid fatal injuries? You are quite capable of collecting rags. Kid stood there, and the pots and pans that were originally attached to his hands had been completely melted by the ultra-high temperature of the electromagnetic gun. His right arm also disappeared. That's fine, everyone has red hair, so why do you have 2 hands? It looks quite symmetrical. Dylan walked forward while teasing, but Kid became even more desperate. Although the man was making witty remarks that he didn't understand, his eyes showed no smile at all. Kid! Kira, who was standing not far from Kid, suddenly shouted and rushed towards the crowd with a machete in hand. Kid's body tensed up, and a halo of light appeared under his feet. Ding! Kira's sword was blocked by an. Ka! Ka! Cracks spread from the machete's blade, and then turned into pieces in Kira's incredible eyes. Poof! An spun his body, Kira's upper body flew into the air, and his lower body fell to the ground. Kira! In the distant sky, Kid screamed in pain. Escape with the help of magnetism? Dylan narrowed his eyes, and the sky was instantly covered with clouds. But the next second the clouds dispersed again. There are many civilians nearby, so AoE is not appropriate. Tahir. Yes. After just a few breaths, Kid's figure almost disappeared. Tahir waved the small folding fan in his hand. A ball of purple flame instantly enveloped Kid. But, damn! Laozi will not die, call. Conqueror's pressure exploded, barely protecting Kid's body. At this time, he was already more than 10 kilometers away from Dylan and the others. Tahir frowned and bent towards Dylan. He escaped. Conquerors? Hey, forget it, there's still time. Dylan turned his head and glanced at CP0. 12th. CP0 nodded slightly and turned around to lead the way. When Dylan and the others arrived, only Rayleigh, Kizaru, Bear and Straw Hat were left on the scene. The moment the bear saw Dylan and his group, he immediately rushed to Straw Hat's side without hesitation. We won't see each other again. If you travel, where do you want to go? At that moment, Straw Hat seemed to see a smile on the corner of the bear's mouth, and then lost consciousness. I've finished my work. Dylan had a smile on his face, but everyone could see that the smile was full of hostility. What are you running for? Here is your teacher, your father's subordinate, and a friend who seems to be your father's. Is there any safer place in the world than this? No. Maybe Marineford is FG safer. Grass. Looking at the messy battlefield, Dylan squinted at Rayleigh and Kizaru who had stopped. The bear stood in the distance with his book under his arm, looking calm. It seems like there's nothing wrong with me. Dylan glanced meaningfully at the three people present, then turned and left without waiting for them to speak. After stepping onto CP0's ship, Dylan closed his eyes. The next step is to wait for the Straw Hats to break through the Impel Down, and then start the Summit War. Impel Down. Just wait until Straw Hat releases that guy. Just wait until the sea becomes more violent. In this way, the policies of the world government will be relaxed, and you will have the opportunity to surrender him legitimately and use him for your own use. Before that, go to Impel Down. By the way, has Belmir returned to G5? Tahir replied, returned 2 days ago. Notify key personnel to go to Marineford and be on standby. Yes. The G5 branch immediately gathered after receiving the order, although only the rogue marines remained. But they didn't worry about their safety at all. Just like the man said. Carry out your own justice and don't care about other people's opinions. If you die in battle, I will use double the heads to pay homage to you. Impel Down LV6. Dylan walked alone on the dark corridor. There was a burst of laughter in the distance. Old man Garp, have you come to visit the prison? Ace, who was tied to the wall, and Garp, who was sitting cross-legged on the floor, turned their heads at the same time when they heard the footsteps. Ace. Dylan walked over to Garp and sat down, looking at Ace who was tightly bound. I don't really agree with what you just said. Dylan crossed his arms and looked directly at Ace. Why can't Dodden, who has raised you for 17 years, and Garp, who has taken care of you for 20 years against his own justice, be your parents? What did Whitebeard give you? Give you the confidence to sail in this sea? Is this kindness even deeper than Garp's kindness, and warmer than Dodden's kindness? Ace. What an irony. Ace. To this day, you still call Garp old man. But Whitebeard has become your dad. You keep saying that you hate that man, but... Stop talking. Dylan. Looking at the pale Ace, Garp shook his head, it doesn't matter who you are. Dylan, this is a trust between friends. There is no need to repay. Ah, I see. Dylan looked at Garp, whose face was also slightly pale. How could this guy be disappointed? By the way, Ace, do you understand now? What? Ace raised his head, confused. Do you understand why I didn't untie Yamato's shackles that day? Ace opened his mouth. If Yamato's shackles were taken off by him that day, then. You knew it a long time ago. Dylan looked at Ace's scarred body. Yes, because from the moment you decide to become a pirate, your fate has been decided by yourself. Not even Garp can change that.
If you're enjoying the story so far and want to hear the next parts, don't forget to like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And if you'd like me to continue the series, drop a comment below letting me know. Your feedback and support keep these audiobooks going strong. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.